exposing my wife's cheating, sending her videos to friends, suing her, and leaving her behind. Kim and I first met roughly 7 years ago and quickly formed a close friendship. Both of us were raised in the Midwest, where our devout Christian beliefs placed God above all else, even family. Our Sundays were filled with church visits and hopeful discussions about our future plans. I pursued a successful career as an engineer with promising prospects, while Kim thrived in her role selling accounting software for a prominent technology firm based in Atlanta. Before our marriage, my parents generously gifted me a 3-bedroom house upon my college graduation. With their wealth, they aimed to share their success while still alive, unlike many who wait until after passing away. Mom and Dad found joy in giving during their lifetime. Kim and I exchanged vows a little over 5 years ago, and since then, we've been on an endless honeymoon. Our lovemaking life was vibrant, with passionate encounters at least 4 nights a week. We were viewed as soulmates, much to the amusement of our friends, who were envious of our closeness. Our joy multiplied when we welcomed 2 beautiful blonde twin girls into our lives. After their arrival, our focus shifted entirely to raising them in a nurturing and loving environment. Our lifestyle might be deemed dull by some. We typically dined at home most evenings, reserving Friday and Saturday nights for outings and Sundays for church. Unlike peers our age, we weren't drawn to socializing or keeping up with fashion trends. Kim opted for conservative attire both at work and home, reserving our love-making moments exclusively for our bedroom. Built on trust and transparency, forming a sturdy foundation for our marriage, Kim, naturally affectionate, expressed her love through tender gestures of touch, kisses, and hugs, all of which I adored. We relished in sharing our emotions and cherished each other deeply. While raising twins presented its challenges, I cherished every moment spent with them. Though the twins posed some stress for Kim, I gladly supported her through any difficulties. Our partnership was built on effective communication, ensuring we dealt with issues promptly. Life with Kim and our twin girls was going smoothly. However, a week before the annual exhibition, Kim received notice that she had to participate due to others falling ill with the virus. Despite her attempts to decline, she had no choice but to comply due to the urgency of the situation. She expressed her regret, saying she was sorry to leave us for 3 days and that she had tried to avoid it by contacting her boss. She mentioned how much she hated being away from us. I reassured her that we would manage fine without her for a few days and that we would miss her dearly. I helped her pack and accompanied her to the limo arranged by the company for her airport journey. Our marriage had always been solid, built on trust and transparency. There had never been any indication of her behaving in a way that wasn't loving or faithful. We shared everything openly and worked together as a team, especially when it came to our children. On the second night of the exhibition, I received a text from Greg, a colleague and friend who was at a cybersecurity event in Atlanta. He mentioned Kim being at the exhibition and asked if I was supposed to be at the security conference. He seemed curious about the trade show Kim was attending, and I confirmed it was in Atlanta but wasn't sure of the exact name. Greg's messages left me wondering what he was trying to imply. His message contained 2 photos and a video. I sat paralyzed with dread. The first photo depicted my wife in an unfamiliar outfit, the shortest dress I'd ever seen her wear, accentuating her ample chest with a plunging neckline. She wore pumps I didn't recognize, her hair and makeup flawless, radiating stunning allure. Never had she appeared so alluring to me. Initially, upon seeing the first photo, I convinced myself it must be someone resembling Kim, as it seemed implausible it could be her. I chuckled inwardly, musing, I wish Kim would dress like that one day. But the amusement faded when the subsequent photo emerged, a close-up of her closely seated next to Jonathan, one of her bosses. I sat there, stunned, motionless, not even blinking until the next photo materialized, a close-up of her smiling and gazing into Jonathan's eyes. My heart sank at the sight, though I attempted to rationalize that there must be a logical explanation, albeit futile. The following message contained a brief video clip showing my wife kissing Jonathan, her arms wrapped around his neck while his hand rested on her right breast. In that instant, my mind exploded. I felt as if my entire world collapsed upon me, tears of anguish streaming down my face, my heart racing, and a wave of nausea engulfing me. A message came through, "Hey, are you okay? What should I do? Can you see her right now?" "Yes, I'll give her a call right away to check on her." I dialed her number, hearing it ring several times before reaching voicemail. Leaving a message, I expressed our longing to speak with her and ensure she had a pleasant evening. I reached out to Greg, updating him on the call. "I just tried reaching her. What happened?" Greg's remorse was palpable. "David, I'm sorry about this." She took her phone out of her purse, glanced at the caller ID, then returned it to her purse. "I can't believe it's her. I've never seen her behave or dress like this before." Greg, it's okay. Thank you for being upfront with me. You're a true friend. I'll handle this myself. If possible, avoid confronting her. Keep me informed if anything else occurs, but don't waste time trailing her. I'll handle it from here. Are you going to be okay, buddy? No, I'm far from okay, but I know what I need to do. I'll handle it. I'm still reeling from the shock, but I'll come to terms with everything. Thanks again. Anytime. I'm here for you. Take care of yourself, Greg. Thanks once more. I poured a stronger drink and sat in the dimly lit living room, grappling with the sudden collapse of my world. In under 20 minutes, I had been oblivious to any issues in our relationship. How long had this been going on? Was I truly oblivious to the signs? No, she never gave me cause for concern. In fact, over the past 6 months, our bond had grown stronger, our closeness intensified. None of it made sense, leaving me bewildered. In the following hour, Greg sent more photos and videos. A brief clip showed them dancing, his hand on her back. Another captured them kissing on the dance floor. A photo depicted a deep, private kiss on a deserted dance floor, oblivious to the music's end. I acknowledged it was over between us, yet there was much I needed to unravel and comprehend. Leveraging my analytical skills as an engineer and problem solver, I spent the ensuing days devising a plan. Kim surprised me with a call at 10 p.m. After receiving their final photo, I took a deep breath, striving to compose myself. I resolved not to reveal any inkling of awareness about her actions. Hey there, sorry I missed your earlier call. I was at a dinner meeting and couldn't talk. I miss you so much, baby. Wish I could be there with you, cuddling under the covers, showering you with kisses. I miss you too, Kim. I love you deeply, and thanks for calling. The girls are adorable, and I'll send you some photos. They're missing their mom and want you to come home. I tried to leave tomorrow, but my boss insisted I stay. Hate being away from you, darling. We'll celebrate when you're back. Finish for today? Yes, I'm preparing for bed and another long work day. Love you, baby, and I'll call you tomorrow. Good night, Kim. I love you more than words can express. And with that, I hung up, tears welling up again. What I said was genuine. I loved her more than anything and hoped this was just a terrible dream. Past midnight, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I wondered if she was truly in her hotel room and what she was up to. My question was answered by another message from Greg. It was a photo of Kim and Jonathan on a lobby sofa, sharing a kiss, his hand beneath her short skirt, her arms wrapped around his neck. They resembled a couple in love, publicly displaying their affection. And one last thing, buddy. I'm done for today, but it looks like she's busy. Let me know if you want me to stop. I can easily put an end to this. It's tough to face right now, but thanks for the photos. No need. Let her go. It's her wrongdoing, not yours. Stay out of it. Thanks again. I cried myself to sleep, knowing that the love of my life had betrayed me. Eventually, exhaustion and the comfort of our marriage vows and our daughter's sleep eased the pain and tears until I woke up the next morning. Kim sent me several affectionate messages, adorned with hearts, kisses, and emojis. She professed her love, expressing how much she missed both me and the girls. She even hinted at a passionate night ahead upon her return. When she came back, she showered me with sweetness and affection, behaving as though nothing had transpired. I began to wonder if perhaps she suffered from dissociative disorder or had been unknowingly medicated. Despite my search for explanations, I realized I needed to confront the reality and prepare for her imminent return home. Our frequent conversations seemed normal, with Kim expressing her longing to reunite with us. I couldn't determine what upset me more, her infidelity or the deceit accompanying it. Feeling deceived cut as deep as witnessing her embrace with Jonathan. Upon learning of my wife's betrayal through Greg's messages, I took decisive action. Leveraging my tech expertise, I discreetly installed tracking software on her phone, initially intended for locating misplaced devices. Opting for the latest software available, I even walked Kim through its setup. This software also featured a voice recorder, capable of capturing calls, texts, and emails, with automatic cloud uploads if activated. Let me clarify, my intention wasn't to spy on her, but circumstances warranted caution. Before this incident, I never considered invading her privacy. However, following recent events, my trust had been shattered irreparably. My priority was safeguarding our daughters and salvaging our marriage, if feasible. Thankfully, caring for the twins kept me occupied, offering respite from thoughts of our disintegrating relationship. Whether it was preparing breakfast, tidying up after them, or engaging in doll play, these moments were precious amidst the turmoil. Trust me, tending to 3-year-old twins is no small feat. It was 2 p.m., and I finally managed to get the girls to settle down for their afternoon nap. After tidying up the house and showering, I sat at the table to catch up. Kim had sent me 6 more affectionate messages, mentioning she would call at 5 p.m. once her day wrapped up. After reading them, I accessed the cloud from my laptop, logged into her account, and reviewed everything recorded since activating the spying software. I sat in shock as I read the messages exchanged with Jonathan. Here are a few excerpts. "You were incredible last night, baby. Can't wait for tonight. Thanks, kitten. I enjoyed it too. Can we head to my room after work before dinner? Certainly, but I need to call my husband first. I should be ready by 5:15. Does your husband suspect anything? Of course not. He thinks I love him, and I'll keep it that way. We've kept it a secret for over 6 months, and he's clueless. Don't worry." My anger became overwhelming, prompting me to stop reading. Kitty? Did he call her kitten? That's my term for her. During closeness. Did she give him that too? Was I truly that oblivious? What kind of fool was I? I dropped my laptop on a chair and screamed, grabbing a lamp from the table and hurling it forcefully into the wall, shattering it into pieces. The rage I had managed to control now consumed me. As I was about to break another lamp, I heard the girls crying. Their cries snapped me back to reality, and I regained control. I rushed into the bedroom, holding both girls in my arms until they calmed down. After cleaning up the glass from my outburst, I let them play in the living room while I sat with another strong drink, reflecting on my actions. In my view, the marriage was beyond repair, and it was time to take action. I lacked the strength to listen to their conversations or review any more files, so I allowed them to accumulate in the cloud. I decided to play along with Kim, just as she had deceived me. My immediate plan was to act like a loving husband while strategizing my next steps. I intended to contact a divorce lawyer, hire a private investigator, and find a way to secure custody of the girls. Their well-being was my top priority and the only thing that truly mattered to me. Hey, sweetheart, how are the girls holding up? They're missing their mommy. Oh my goodness, they're on my mind all day, every day. And of course, you too. I can't wait to wrap my arms around you when I get back. I'm going to give you the warmest kiss you've ever had. I played along, saying, "Oh darling, I think of you constantly, longing to embrace my loving, beautiful wife. Soon, my love, we'll be reunited." Somehow I kept it together, and our call lasted precisely 15 minutes. At 5:15, she bid farewell, saying, "I love you, David. I have to go catch the bus back to the hotel. I'll message you later." "I love you," another effortlessly delivered lie. She had quite the talent for it. "I love you too, sweetheart, more than you can imagine." The pain of her deception had now transformed into contempt, anger, and a desire for revenge. I was determined to expose her lies and hold her accountable. I had loved her wholeheartedly, making this betrayal all the more difficult to bear. I greeted her at the airport, and she embraced and kissed me just as she had promised. Either she was an exceptional actress, or she genuinely cared for me deeply. Was her involvement with Jonathan merely physical? Her behavior continued to baffle me. She spent an hour with the girls, relishing their company. That night, she was exceptionally affectionate in bed, repeatedly expressing how much she missed me and the girls, and lamenting her prolonged absence. She spoke of wanting nothing more than to be with me, holding each other in bed. She was tender, loving, and entirely different from the woman I saw at the fair. I reciprocated her affection and cherished our time together. It felt genuine, and I yearned for it to be authentic because being with her was all I desired. Yet deep down, I knew it would soon come to an end. I kept my newfound knowledge hidden, showering her with love and fulfilling her every night. To outsiders, our relationship seemed idyllic, sparking envy in others. This charade persisted for 3 months, during which I searched for any signs of infidelity but found none. She arrived home from work at her usual time every evening, with no unusual phone calls or text messages. I even dared to hope that it was all a mistake and that things would resolve themselves. Mr. Bryce, a private investigator, called me and arranged to meet the next day. I drove downtown to their office and sat in their conference room. "Good afternoon, David. Good to see you again." "Likewise, Mr. Bryce." "David, I wish I had better news, but unfortunately I have to deliver some bad news. Are you prepared to review our findings?" I sighed and nodded in agreement. While I hoped for the best, deep down, I knew what was happening between Kim and Jonathan. Mr. Bryce placed a thick leather 3-ring binder in front of me. It contained sections labeled text messages, voice transcripts, video calls, phone call transcripts, and photos. "Mr. Bryce, before we delve into this, I'm perplexed because I've been closely monitoring her activities and schedule for the past 3 months, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She's been the ideal wife and partner, and none of this makes sense. Let me guide you through this and see if anything becomes clearer." I refrained from accessing cloud files because I couldn't bear the thought of reading the texts, hoping for a positive outcome. Unfortunately, that hope was dashed. There were over 75 pages of text messages, 25 pages of emails, and 75 pages of time-stamped photos showing them entering and exiting hotel rooms together. Additionally, there were over 82 video calls and 50 pages of phone conversations. Kim and Jonathan had been visiting a motel at least 4 times a week for the past 3 months, spending an average of 2 hours together during each visit. It appears that for the past month, there have been 2 men meeting your wife 4 times a week. Do you recognize this man? Oh my God, is this Jason Sinclair? Is he the CEO of her company? Are you saying she's involved with 2 men, one of whom is the CEO? I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but based on the evidence from text messages, phone calls, and videos, it's evident that he's engaged in a carnal relationship with your wife. The video call labeled balcony actually captured them in a love-making moment, with him behind her as she leaned over the railing. They seemed unaware they were being recorded. Our high-def video captured close-ups of their faces, and the audio was also recorded. He played the video on the 80-inch screen. There was Kim, my wife, leaning over the railing with her CEO standing behind her. I felt sick to my stomach. I had to step out of the room for a few minutes to compose myself. I returned to the conference room, urging them to continue, as I was now eager to see what my wife had been up to. The video labeled Balcony 2 shows your wife with both Jason and Jonathan simultaneously. I regret having to show you all this, but since they were in public, you can use these videos if you decide to proceed with your divorce and custody battle. I sat there, mouth agape, still finding it difficult to believe it could be Kim. I prayed fervently that it was all just a colossal mistake. David, we've looked into Jonathan Wills and Jason Sinclair. Jonathan has been married for 10 years with 4 young children. Mr. Sinclair has also been married for 25 years with 3 grown children. Text messages reveal that Jonathan introduced Jason into their activities after your wife expressed interest in a triangle of love. It's quite grim, so I'll leave you to review it when you're ready. Here's the folder and a USB drive containing all the files and videos your lawyer will likely need. When I met with my lawyer, she was astonished at the wealth of evidence we had gathered, and couldn't believe there were no prior signs of infidelity at home. Kim continued to play the role of a devoted wife and mother, behaving as if everything was normal. The lawyer outlined various legal avenues based on the evidence I provided, but needed time to explore our options fully, scheduling another appointment for the following week. I instructed her to begin filing the divorce papers as soon as possible. Leaving her office, I felt a pit in my stomach. I knew it was over before these meetings, but watching those videos extinguished any hope of reconciliation. I was still baffled. Who was this woman? Later that evening, after putting the girls to bed, we watched an old movie I found on Netflix called Unfaithful. I heard it was a good film. Let's give it a shot, I suggested, hitting play. Given the film's theme of infidelity, I had prepared for the conversation in advance. During the movie, I casually mentioned a female intern at my office who had been showing interest in me for months. Can you imagine me with another woman? I chuckled. Kim eyed me suspiciously. Really? Who? If I catch you even thinking about being with her, I'm leaving. Got it. You're mine and no one else's, she asserted sternly. Despite my attempts to keep the mood light, she was dead serious. She made it abundantly clear that she wouldn't tolerate any deceit. It was astounding how indignant she was about it, considering her own actions. It was driving me mad. David, why didn't you tell me about her sooner? What's her name? Kim, relax. She's just an intern, a young, flirtatious girl. I've completely ignored her. What about you, Kim? You're the most beautiful girl in your office. Do you mean to tell me no one ever flirts with you? Of course not. They all know I'm married and would never cheat on you. So in our entire marriage, you never entertained the thought of being with another guy? Or did anything like that? Not even a friendly kiss? Have you ever cheated on me? Baby. Her anger flared. Are you kidding me? Did you seriously just ask me that? I constantly express my love for you. I'm always faithful to you, and I couldn't imagine being with another man. You're being ridiculous. I can't believe you'd even think that. I apologized, agreeing with her, and resumed watching the movie. I chuckled to myself, thinking she could have been an actress with how convincing she was. No wonder she excelled at her job. Once things settled down, she leaned against my shoulder again, and I knew it was time. I grabbed my phone, opened the messaging app, and selected a photo of Kim and Jonathan kissing on the dance floor, his hand on her behind. I was studying the photo when she noticed my distraction. What are you doing, David? Why aren't you watching the movie? Because what I'm looking at is more real. What do you mean? I muted the movie and displayed the photo to her. She froze, attempting to speak but failing. I kept my gaze on the photo. Quite the passionate kiss you're giving, Jonathan. Allow me to explain. Where did you get this? You were dining with your buddy Greg Stanton, who spotted you with that guy in the restaurant. He texted me to confirm if it was you or if he was mistaken. Turns out it was indeed you, and he sent me this. Also, gotta say, you look stunning in that dress. I've never seen you in something so revealing. Were you trying to impress your boyfriend? Oh, you have an explanation. I'm all ears, I remarked, placing the phone back on my lap. Baby, we only had one dance and he was intoxicated. After the song ended, he grabbed me and kissed me. What you don't see is that right afterward, I slapped him and caused a scene. I would never allow that to happen. I actually bought this dress for a business dinner, but didn't realize how revealing it was until now. I'm so sorry. I understand. It happens. And that was the only incident? I sensed her wavering confidence and reassured her. Yes, baby, and he won't try it again. The movie resumed, and I reclined quietly, knowing Kim was uneasy. After a few minutes, I retrieved my phone and began playing a video of them sitting on the couch, with his hand under her skirt. She shot me a frightened look. What are you watching now? Remember that night when you called saying you had a long day and were getting ready for bed? Yes, she whispered. It's interesting. I received another text from Greg 2 hours after your call, and this time it was a video. Do you want to see? I asked, hitting play, revealing her and Jonathan kissing while his hands roamed her lovemaking areas that should have been mine alone. I'm eager to hear a new explanation, I remarked, smiling. My anger had dissipated, replaced by contempt, and amusement at her response. Oh, David, I'm so sorry. After we hung up, Jonathan called, saying we needed to discuss an issue with a client we were meeting in the morning. He asked me to meet him in the lobby to prepare. I barely recall this video because I had a few drinks and got a bit drunk. You know how I get when I'm intoxicated. I understand the video looks damning, but nothing happened beyond that. I distinctly recall going to my room, telling him to stop, reminding him I was happily married, and leaving. Nothing transpired. You have to trust me. That's part of the issue, kitten, I said, emphasizing the nickname. I noticed her reaction when I said that and continued. The problem is, I've always believed you. Yet in the last 20 minutes, you've lied to me twice. Can you understand my perspective? I'm here alone, and the woman I love is kissing her boss in 2 photos, dressed in the most revealing outfit I've ever seen her wear. How do you think I feel? Baby David, I love you. This happened 3 months ago. Why didn't you confront me earlier? Honestly? I wanted to see if you'd come clean on your own. I wanted assurance that my wife was as truthful and transparent as we've always been with each other. But now I see where we stand. Are there any other lies? Are you involved with him? Do you love him? Now I was toying with her, relishing her confusion and performance. She began sobbing, repeatedly professing her love for me. Kim, please refrain from telling me how much you love me. I know you love me, and I still love you, but that doesn't change the reality of these photos. I need answers. Are there other deceptions? I added discreetly, hitting the record button on the phone. David, hear me out. Nothing beyond a kiss happened. I admit I kissed him as you saw, but that was the extent of it. Each time I told him to stop. I'm not sure what Greg saw or told you, but you have to trust me, all right? Stop crying, baby. I trust you, however, I'm puzzled by your attire. You never dressed like that for me, nor do you style your hair and makeup that way. Was it for him? You haven't answered my question. Do you have feelings for him? Are you considering leaving me, Kim? Please, I need the truth. The tears resumed. No, David, my love is only for you. I never want to lose you. Nothing happened, and I'm not sure why I dressed like that. It's unlike me. Perhaps it was because other women were dressed similarly, and I wanted to look as good. I'm not certain. I felt a bit insecure. I can understand that, but why didn't you inform me about Jonathan and your interactions? Since nothing truly occurred and I ended it, I didn't want to upset you. He's my superior, and I couldn't risk losing my job. If anything happened, I would have told you immediately. You understand, right? I comforted her with a kiss and embraced her gently, allowing her to cry. This marked the beginning of a month-long scheme to exact my revenge. That night, we made love, and I reveled in her remarkable skills, detached as her spouse and envisioning myself as one of her lovers. I refused to deny myself her body or caution her about anything peculiar. Her acting was commendable, but at that moment, I was indifferent. She was more fervent than ever, attempting to convince me of my exclusive place in her heart. This routine persisted for the following weeks. Each night, her performance was flawless, and I simply savored the spectacle. The next morning, I checked the cloud for any correspondence with Jonathan. Predictably, she didn't disappoint. Oh my God, someone took photos of us at the fair and sent them to David. His friend saw me at the restaurant without David. I'm unsure if he's aware, but the video showed us kissing. Damn, now that you mention it, I recall a man with a phone across from us observing, but I didn't think much of it. How did David react? Nothing. I convinced him nothing happened. I intervened. He's unaware I spent the night in your room. I persuaded him it was drinks-induced and made amends. He's easily swayed. A few kisses and good love-making have always sufficed. Be cautious, baby. We agreed to meet there tomorrow at 1 p.m. as usual. Can't wait. Love you, baby. Love you too, kitten. That marked the final message, and I sat silently pondering it all. Undoubtedly, I felt like the world's biggest fool, yet there's a certain satisfaction in revenge. So, I proceeded with determination. However, I took pleasure in observing Kim's antics and awaited to see how many more lies she would spin. Naturally, my first course of action was to tend to my financial affairs, transferring funds, closing accounts, and the like. I opted to keep my primary Visa card active, but slashed the limit to $2,500 to mitigate potential damage. Since Kim remained clueless about my mounting anger, she never anticipated any changes. I confirmed with my lawyer that since the house was mine pre-marriage, I wouldn't be compelled to vacate upon notification. Naturally, I drafted the infamous email containing videos, texts, and photos that I eventually sent to all her contacts, friends, family, and co-workers. Additionally, I crafted duplicate binders from my personal account for Mrs. Sinclair and Mrs. Wills to share in their anguish. These would be distributed simultaneously with notifications and legal filings. I instructed my lawyer to gear up for public civil lawsuits against both Jonathan, her boss, and Jason, the company's CEO. Given the company's prominence on the East Coast, my lawyer relished the prospect of involving the CEO. We planned to propose a settlement before unveiling the CEO and manager's alleged carnal aggravation of employees. Collaborating with child services attorneys, we aimed for full custody and diligently compiled documents for the investigation. Over the ensuing weeks, everything appeared normal. We tended to the children and spent quality time together daily. Our conversations danced around the elephant in the room, leaving the issue untouched. I'm certain my silence on the matter drove her to the brink of madness. The uncertainty of my thoughts must have been agonizing. To further toy with Kim, I posed a few probing questions. So, Kim, has your boss taken any action against you since the fair? Is there something you'd like to share? Having gleaned insights from her conversations with Jonathan, I marveled at her composure in maintaining her facade of deceit. It was amusing to observe her reaction, and now I could even predict when she was about to lie. She responded calmly, stating that nothing had occurred. It felt odd because both of us were acting as if nothing had transpired, which was true in reality. He remained completely professional, and our interactions were minimal due to our busy schedules. I sat there with a wry smile, still astonished that the woman who bore my children and whom I loved could lie so effortlessly. That night, I released the last remnants of the anger simmering within me. I confronted her and took full advantage of her that night. Oh my God, David, what got into you? You're behaving so wildly today. I've never seen you so bold and uninhibited. I enjoyed it. What a whirlwind. I thought to myself, I knew this would be the final encounter before all of this turmoil surfaced the next day, and I intended to take everything I could from my soon-to-be ex-wife. That afternoon, the sheriff entered the office of Tricom International and requested to see Mr. Sinclair. Moments later, Sheriff Clark handed him an envelope. Mr. Sinclair, you've been served. A moment later, Sinclair found himself alone in his spacious office, clutching the envelope with fear gripping his entire being. After reading the complaint repeatedly, he promptly instructed his secretary to summon Jason to his office while simultaneously calling him. Jason, too, had just been served by the same sheriff. He rushed into Sinclair's office, and they both stood there stunned and bewildered. What the hell? How did this happen, Jason? If my wife catches wind of this, I'm finished. This is on you. You assured me this woman would never leave us. Fix this, Jason, or I swear I'll ruin you and your family. Do you understand? Sinclair was not one to be trifled with, a ruthless businessman who had clawed his way to the top of the multi-billion-dollar organization and had no intention of backing down. Jonathan hurried out of his office and waited for the elevator to descend to the 12th floor, intending to speak with Kim. As he traversed the hallway toward her office, he noticed the sheriff approaching from the opposite direction, indicating that he had come from Kim's direction. Bursting into her office, he found her seated at her desk, tears streaming down her face. Overwhelmed with emotion, she was unable to speak. David had shattered her world much like she had done to him months earlier. It took her more than an hour to compose herself enough to articulate her thoughts. What in the world happened? Or how did he find out about everything? What do you mean? I've just been served with divorce papers. What do you mean by us? Sinclair and I are also being sued and facing a civil lawsuit for our actions. We're unsure of the evidence against us, but there must be more than just the 2 images you saw. You need to convince David to back off, or else Sinclair will ruin us and my family. Oh my God, this is terrible. It's awful. You must go to him and make him see reason. Do whatever it takes to halt this. Head home and address this. Call me tonight if you can and keep me informed. Trembling, Kim packed her belongings and drove home. Her beloved husband and the father of her children was divorcing her. She didn't want a divorce, and genuinely loved David. However, she found herself unable to resist the allure of carnal excitement. She needed to make David understand that she couldn't bear to lose him over this. Returning to an empty house, she found the girls were at David's sister's house, as they were every afternoon while they both worked. She phoned David's sister, requesting she keep the children overnight. Without inquiring further, Katie gladly agreed to take care of the girls for the night. Kim showered, styled her hair and makeup, and anxiously awaited David's return from work. At 6, she heard the garage door open and nervously anticipated his entrance into the house. Hi, Kim. Didn't expect to see you tonight. Thought you'd be with Jonathan. Oh, wait, he's married with kids. This might get awkward. David, please, let's talk. She took his hand and seated him beside her on the sofa. Despite the circumstances, she appeared surprisingly composed and more pleasant than usual when greeting him. Expecting this, he played along. David, as you already know, I was served today, but do you realize I don't want a divorce? I need you and love you. I won't sign these papers. Jonathan means nothing to me. Yes, we had lovemaking, but it wasn't love. I just needed it, and I'm truly sorry. I'll never do it again, I promise. Oh, you promise? Guess I can trust you now. Sure, let's forget everything and get back to normal, I said, smiling lovingly. Kim embraced me and planted a kiss. Thank you, baby. I love you so much. I'm grateful you forgive me and understand. I won't lie to you again. Surprised, I was certain she caught my sarcasm. Pulling away, I gently pushed her aside. You're delusional. I can't trust you anymore. After all your lies and deceit, there's nothing left. I gave you many chances, but you kept lying, deceiving me, and ruining our lives. I know all about your daily hotel rendezvous with your bosses. Did you really think I'd take you back after all this? Have you even considered the damage you're causing to the girls? I can't turn a blind eye to this. But you can, and why go after Sinclair and Jonathan? Well, your partners in crime are also CEOs of a multi-billion-dollar company. Once I'm out of here, I'll need money to properly support the girls since they're partly responsible for destroying our marriage and my life. I'll destroy them too. I plan to dismantle their family, hit them financially, and use them the way they used you. Kim had never witnessed David express himself in such a manner, nor had she seen him so intensely angry and focused. The seriousness of the situation finally struck her, and she realized she had lost control over both the situation and her husband. All she could do now was plead. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she knelt before David, clutching his legs and begging for forgiveness. Though David felt a pang of sympathy for her, his anger overpowered any compassion, and he lifted her onto the sofa, speaking to her in a gentle tone as if she were a child. David laid out a plan. Listen, Kim, pack your bag and stay at your mom's for a few nights. Get a lawyer, then we can arrange a meeting to discuss everything. In the meantime, a word to the wise, I suggest you stay away from Jason and Jonathan. Things are about to get messy. Later that evening at her mom's, she explained that she and David had a disagreement, and she needed to stay with her for a while. At 11 p.m., she called Jonathan on his cell. Jonathan quickly looped in Jason on a 3-way call. Jason, are you here? Kim, are you there? Yes, we are here, Sinclair initiated the conversation. So Kim, did you manage to persuade him to give up the lawsuits and the divorce? No. In fact, he kicked me out and warned me to be careful because it could lead to trouble. Sinclair shouted into the phone, Jesus Christ, Jonathan, what have you done, Kim, you freaking prick? I swear I will have you eliminated if my family finds out about this. I don't care what you do, but make it stop. Kim cried, I can't do anything. He's out of control and won't listen to anything I say. He doesn't even answer my calls or texts. Sinclair spoke up, Jonathan, you need to fix this. Make an appointment with David and have him meet us at a bar somewhere. Anything loud, and the noisier the better. Kim, you will be there too and ask him to drop the lawsuit in front of us. If he says no, then Jonathan and I will explain how damaging it will be for him and his family if he doesn't back down. I have people tasked with fixing things like this, and I won't hesitate to use them to keep this show from turning into complete crap. Jonathan, do you understand what you need to do? Yes, Mr. Sinclair. Kim, you know what you have to do, right? Yes, Mr. Sinclair. Do it and make it happen tomorrow afternoon. We don't have time to waste. Sinclair disappeared. Kim and Jonathan hung up after a few minutes, considering the situation. That night, upon hearing the call, David wasn't surprised by their desperation and devised his own plan. As expected, Jonathan called the next morning to arrange a settlement meeting. They agreed to meet at 6 p.m. in a courtyard. At 4 p.m., David was at his private investigator's office preparing for the meeting. They utilized cutting-edge technology with noise cancellation to capture clear sound even in noisy environments. A private investigator would also be present to film the meeting as evidence. David arrived at 6:15, purposefully keeping them waiting and allowing time for the private investigator to set up his video camera. Upon seeing Kim, he approached the group. "Kim, I'm surprised to see you here with your partners, but I suppose we know where your allegiances lie. Gentlemen, what brings us together? Why are we here?" Sinclair spoke up. "David, I'm Jason Sinclair, and I requested this meeting." "Sinclair, you look quite different in person. These videos don't capture your essence. Can't say it's a pleasure to meet you." "Indeed, that's precisely why we're here. This is Jonathan Wills." "Jonathan, the man who slept with my wife and wrecked my marriage. Can't say it's a pleasure to meet any of you." Sinclair interjected, "I understand your anger. If I were in your shoes, I'm not sure how I'd react, but we need to discuss something." "Follow me. What's on your mind?" asked David. "We want you to drop the lawsuits against me, Jonathan, and the company." "Funny, that's all?" "Oh no, sorry, can't do that. Someone has to pay for taking away the most important thing in my life," David stated, looking at Kim, "the only woman I've ever loved and the mother of my children." Kim began to cry, realizing the magnitude of the damage she had caused. "What will it take for you to end this and take Kim back?" "Name your price." "Firstly, no amount of money could ever make me take her back. She betrayed my love, trust, and our children's lives for a fling with you two. It's out of the question. I'll drop the civil and corporate cases under two conditions. Firstly, I want $5 million compensation. Secondly, I want to meet both your wives, and Kim must fully admit her actions. If you agree to these conditions, I'll end the legal proceedings." "Go to hell, David. I'll offer you 100 grand and you'll sign an agreement to keep quiet about this forever," Sinclair whispered. "I won't let my family suffer if they find out, David. I'll end you. Kim told us your daily routine, making you vanish would be easy." "Let's try again." David was surprised but smiled and took a sip of his drink. "Well, I'll reduce the amount to $4 million, but your families must know what you did." Sinclair was stunned. "David, you're sealing your fate. Think it over. Drop the charges and take Kim back. It was just a fling. We can resolve this." David grabbed his phone and sent 2 text messages. Then he accessed his email and dispatched the prearranged email containing all the videos and images. Texts had now been distributed to all of Kim's friends, family, and colleagues. The 2 messages he sent were to the criers stationed outside Jason and Jonathan's residences, awaiting his directives. The instructions were simple: deliver the package. Within moments, Mrs. Sinclair and Mrs. Wills possessed duplicate 3-ring binders containing comprehensive evidence of their husband's affair, including photos, videos, messages, phone logs, and other incriminating evidence. Sinclair, growing increasingly irate due to David's apparent indifference, erupted in anger. "What the hell, David? I'm speaking to you. What's your response? Are you dropping the charges?" To which David retorted, "My answer to you, Jason, Jonathan, and my wife is, go to hell." Just then, the phones of both Jason and Jonathan began to ring. It was their wives on the line. Sinclair's face reddened, shooting David a glare of fury. Jonathan, visibly shaken, even teared up. Kim, bewildered, questioned David about the commotion. His response was cryptic. "Check your email in a few minutes, and I believe you'll understand." After ending the call with his wife, Sinclair pointed an accusatory finger at David. "You're dead, David. I'll slit your throat and watch you die like a dog." With that threat, he stormed out of the bar. Jonathan, confronting David, uttered a plaintive, "Why? Why would you do this to me?" David was astounded by the question. "Seriously? You've been using my wife, the love of my life and the mother of my twin girls, every day for the past 6 months, arranging trysts with Sinclair, and you're surprised someone would retaliate? Everything I sent to your sweet wife was for her sake, to expose what a depraved beast of prey you are and how you've destroyed countless lives." Kim's phone began ringing as her sister, brother, and aunt called her shortly afterward. They all watched the videos and photos and had numerous questions. Initially, Kim denied knowledge of the situation, but then checked her email to see what I had sent. Her jaw dropped, and she shot me an angry look. "How could you do this to me? You've made it too easy, darling. I truly love you, but it's over between us." After I hand this audio recording of the meeting to the authorities and social services, my lawyer is confident I'll secure full custody of the girls. And you'll be fortunate to evade jail time. I'm sorry, but you must face the consequences of your actions. To prevent them from becoming public knowledge, TRICOM resolved the lawsuit by compensating David Hunter with $2 million. Jason Sinclair was ousted as CEO and terminated without severance due to breaching the morals clause in his contract. He suffered losses exceeding $10 million in stock options and forfeited a $5 million severance package. Sinclair also received a 5-year sentence for conspiracy to commit homicide and other charges. His wife divorced him while he was incarcerated and financially decimated him. Upon investigation of his business dealings, he exited prison destitute, bereft of family, and homeless. This news provided David with some solace, and he even cracked a smile for the first time in months. Mrs. Wills also divorced Jonathan, leaving him without money, shelter, child support, or half of his income in alimony. He was fined $1 million in a civil trial for conspiracy, infidelity, and loss of affection. Following his job loss, Jonathan resorted to working as a day laborer. Learning of Jonathan's downfall further gratified David, who took pleasure in Jonathan's subsequent bankruptcy and life under an overpass among day workers. Kim received a 5-year prison sentence, but with David's assistance, it was commuted to 1 year of house arrest, followed by 4 years of probation for conspiracy. She lost custody of the children, and David gained full custody. Despite her efforts, she failed to secure a divorce due to the evidence and the nature of the crime. With the house belonging to David, she found herself homeless upon termination. She earned the same amount as David, so no child support was necessary. Kim spiraled into a profound depression and now resides in her mother's basement. Her family turned against her for her actions, resulting in the loss of her visitation rights with her children. The email I sent with the attached videos and photos exposed a dark side of Kim that no one had recognized before. This had the intended effect, completely shattering the support network within the Kim family. Forgiveness seems unattainable for Kim, even from herself. She relies on medication following 3 self-destruction attempts and has been in and out of mental hospitals for the past 6 months, struggling to come to terms with the lives she contributed to destroying. David now dedicates all his time to his daughters. Being free from work post-divorce allows him to focus entirely on raising his children. Since Kim's self-destruction attempt, the girls have not seen their mother, but they receive ample support from David's sister and mother. They will recover from this traumatic ordeal without any lasting effects. While revenge brought a fleeting sense of satisfaction, it cannot fully heal David's wounds. He still harbors love and forgiveness for Kim, but the memory of her betrayal remains etched in his mind. Taking care of his daughters keeps him occupied and wards off loneliness. However, due to the betrayal, lies, and deceit, it will take years before David can open his heart to love and trust again. It's remarkable how seemingly insignificant actions can have profound effects on numerous lives. Caution is advised.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Alexander Carrington stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, gazing out at the city skyline. At 42, he was an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing steel-gray eyes that missed nothing. As the CEO of a global logistics empire, Alex had built his success on a relentless pursuit of control and perfection. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Carrington, your son is here to see you." "Send him in," Alex replied, his stern expression softening slightly. 10-year-old Max burst into the room, clutching Claire's iPhone in his small hands. "Dad, what's a prenup?" he asked. Alex froze, his blood running cold. "Where did you hear that word, Max?" "It was in Mom's email," Max said innocently, holding up the phone. Feigning calm, Alex took the device from his son. His heart stopped as his eyes landed on an email thread between Claire and her divorce lawyer. They were plotting, waiting for his father's inheritance. Something had clearly shifted. "Max, why don't you go play in my secretary's office for a while?" Alex said, his voice tight. "I need to talk to your mother." As Max left, Alex strode purposefully to the elevator, his mind racing. He found Claire in their sprawling penthouse, lounging on a chaise with a fashion magazine in hand. "Care to explain this?" he demanded, tossing the phone onto the coffee table. Claire's face paled as her eyes flicked to the screen. She snatched up the phone, her gaze darting between the email and Alex. "How dare you go through my private emails?" she snapped. "Our son found it," Alex replied, his tone icy. "Now explain." Claire's shoulders sagged for a moment before she straightened, a cold smile curling her lips. "I was waiting for your father's inheritance," she said with chilling nonchalance. "But plans change." Alex felt like he'd been punched in the gut, But he wasn't finished yet. With a calm, almost chilling smile, he pulled out his phone and showed Claire a series of incriminating photos, her locked in an intimate embrace with Mark, one of his top employees and an old friend. "You won't get a dime," Alex said softly. "You cheated. Remember the prenup?" Claire's initial shock gave way to disbelief. "How did you?" Alex cut her off, his voice turning to ice. "You're done. Pack your things tonight." Panic began to seep into Claire as the weight of her mistake became clear, but it was too late. Alex turned on his heel and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences. Across town, Mark Stevens sat alone in a dimly lit bar, nursing his third whiskey of the night. His phone buzzed relentlessly, Claire's name flashing on the screen alongside increasingly frantic messages. Their plan had unraveled spectacularly. In a nearby luxury hotel suite, Claire paced back and forth, her pristine designer luggage a stark contrast to her frazzled appearance. She had underestimated Alex, but she wasn't about to admit defeat just yet. The next morning, Alex stormed into the offices of Kingen Logistics, his thunderous expression scattering employees like leaves in a gale. Once in his office, he wasted no time. Get Mark Stevens' access revoked, completely. Now, he barked at his head of security, leaving no room for argument. But Mark had anticipated this. Before his access was severed, he managed to leak sensitive business information to several of Kingen Logistics' biggest competitors. Meanwhile, Claire began plotting her own revenge. Leveraging her sharp social skills and extensive network, she spread malicious rumors about Alex and his supposedly crumbling empire, tarnishing his once spotless reputation. As Alex reviewed damage reports in his office, his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Carrington, there's a Victor Zorin on the line for you." Alex's eyes narrowed. Victor Zorin, ruthless Russian oligarch who had been circling Kingen Logistics for years. Picking up the phone, Alex's voice was cool and controlled. "Zorin, what can I do for you?" "Ah, Alexander." Zorin's heavily accented voice oozed false sympathy. "I heard about your recent troubles. Perhaps now is a good time to discuss the merger we've been dancing around?" Alex's grip tightened on the phone. "Kingen Logistics is not for sale, Zorin. Not now, not ever." As he hung up, Alex realized this was no longer just about personal betrayal. His entire empire was under siege, and the battle had only just begun. Alex sat across from Liam Quinn, a brilliant but enigmatic investigator he'd hired to dig into Claire, Mark, and Zorin. The findings were worse than Alex had imagined. "They've been stealing from the company for months," Liam said, sliding a file across the desk. "Their plan is to bankrupt you, destroy your empire, and flee the country with the profits." Alex's jaw tightened as he flipped through the damning evidence. Before he could fully process the betrayal, his phone buzzed. It was his CFO. "Sir, we have a problem. Zorin just launched a series of strategic moves that are crippling our supply chain." Hanging up, Alex knew time wasn't on his side. He arranged an emergency meeting with Zorin at an exclusive private club. The Russian oligarch sat across from him, exuding smug overconfidence. "Your company is on its knees, Alexander. I'm offering to buy you out at a fraction of its value. It's a generous offer, considering your circumstances." Alex leaned forward, his gaze steely. "You underestimate me, Zorin. This isn't over." As he walked out, his mind was already working through a plan, not just to survive, but to annihilate his enemies. Back at his office, Alex initiated his counterattack. Using the evidence Liam had provided, he filed a lawsuit against Claire and Mark, accusing them of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Within hours, he began dismantling Mark's influence within Kingen Logistics, firing his allies, freezing his accounts, and cutting off every avenue of power. It was precise and devastating, a calculated strike. As night fell, Alex stood at his office window, looking out over the city and the empire he'd built. The war was just beginning, but Alexander Carrington was a man who played to win, and he would, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Claire Carrington paced her rented apartment, the designer luggage surrounding her a glaring mismatch to the modest space. Scrolling through her contacts, she searched for someone who could help her turn the tables. Her finger hovered over a name. Andrea Wells, a relentless investigative journalist. A cold smile spread across Claire's lips as she hit the call button. "Andrea, it's Claire Carrington. I have a story for you. How would you like an exclusive on the dark side of Alexander Carrington's empire?" Across town, Alex sat reviewing the latest reports on the chaos Claire and Mark had caused when his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Carrington, there's a Ms. Wells from the Tribune on the line. She's asking for a comment on some allegations." Alex's eyes narrowed. The battle had escalated. Picking up the phone, His voice was calm and measured. "Ms. Wells, what can I do for you?" Andrea launched into a litany of accusations. Corruption, abusive leadership, shady dealings. Alex listened silently, his mind already calculating his next move. When she finished, he replied with only 2 words. "No comment." Hanging up, he immediately dialed Liam Quinn. "I need everything you have on Claire and Mark, now." Days passed, and the city buzzed with rumors. Headlines screamed of Alex's alleged misdeeds, each accusation more damning than the last. Claire watched from the sidelines, a smug smile on her face as she fed Andrea a steady stream of half-truths and fabrications. Mark, still reeling from his humiliating exit from Carrington Logistics, supplied insider details that added credibility to their claims. But Claire wasn't content with just tarnishing Alex's reputation. She wanted to hurt him where it truly mattered. "I want full custody of Max," she told her lawyer, her voice sharp with determination. "Paint Alex as an unfit father. Use whatever means necessary." Caught in the crossfire, Max retreated into himself. At school, he overheard whispers about his father and noticed the pitying looks from teachers. At home, he felt the tension. Alex's barely contained fury radiating like a storm ready to break. Max didn't fully understand what was happening. He only knew his world was unraveling. Alex, for his part, had anticipated Claire's move. When her lawyer filed for emergency custody, Alex's team was ready to counter. They leaked their own story to the press, a sordid account of Claire's affair, her theft from the company, and her manipulation of Max for her own benefit. Public sympathy, fickle as ever, began to shift. Claire found herself on the receiving end of scathing editorials and relentless social media attacks. Her carefully crafted image as the wronged wife crumbled. In court, Alex's lawyers were unyielding. They presented damning evidence of Claire's infidelity, her attempts to circumvent the prenup, and her plans to flee the country with stolen company funds. The judge, a stern woman with steely eyes, listened impassively. When the gavel fell, Claire's world shattered. Custody is awarded to the father, Alexander Carrington. The mother, Claire Carrington, is granted supervised visitation pending further review. Claire stumbled out of the courtroom, her designer heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Outside, a swarm of reporters waited, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. She pushed past them, her face a mask of despair and rage. Moments later, Alex emerged, holding Max's small hand tightly. He faced the cameras, his expression grim but composed. "Justice has been served," he said simply. "My son and I asked for privacy during this difficult time." As they drove away, Max looked up. "Dad, is it over now?" Alex's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Not yet, son," he said softly, "but it will be soon." Meanwhile, Mark Stevens sat in a dingy motel room, surrounded by empty whiskey bottles and crumpled papers. His laptop glowed in the dim light, displaying financial reports and internal memos from Carrington Logistics. For days, he'd been searching for a weakness, any chink in Alex's armor. His phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. He answered, his voice weary. "Stevens." "Mr. Stevens," a voice replied, heavily accented and unmistakably Russian. "I believe we share a mutual interest in Alexander Carrington's downfall." Mark sat up, his mind racing. "Who is this?" "A friend. One who can provide the resources you need to finish what you started." It was Zorov. Mark's pulse quickened. This was it, his last chance to strike back at Alex. "I'm listening," he said. Across the city, in his penthouse office, the next move was already being planned. Alex was in the middle of a video conference when alarms erupted from his computer. Red warning messages flashed across multiple screens. "Sir," his head of IT's panicked voice crackled through the speakers. "We're under attack. Massive data breaches. Our logistics software is compromised, and shipments are being rerouted." Alex's expression darkened. He had anticipated this move, but the sheer scale of the attack exceeded his expectations. "Initiate Protocol Omega," he ordered, his tone cold and resolute. As chaos consumed Carrington Logistics, Alex remained eerily calm. Shipments were delayed, contracts breached, and the company's stock price plummeted. His phone rang incessantly, board members, partners, and media outlets all demanding answers. In a hidden command center deep beneath Carrington Tower, Alex monitored the escalating situation. Liam Quinn stood beside him, providing real-time updates. "It's Mark," Liam confirmed grimly. "He's working with a team of elite hackers. But there's more. He's got Zorov backing him." "Serious backing?" Alex nodded, unsurprised. "And our countermeasures?" Liam's lips curled into a predatory smile, though his eyes remained cold. In place and ready. Just say the word. Alex's finger hovered over a button on the console. Memories of betrayal flashed in his mind. Claire, Mark, and others who had turned against him. He thought of Max, caught in the middle of this war. His jaw tightened. Execute, he commanded. Across the city, in his motel room, Mark Stevens was celebrating. His laptop displayed the havoc unfolding at Carrington Logistics. Zorov's voice crackled through the speaker, satisfaction dripping from every word. Excellent work, Mr. Stevens, Zorov purred. Carrington is finished. I'll have my team draft the acquisition papers immediately. Mark poured himself another drink, grinning. Here's to the fall of Alexander Carrington, he toasted. As he raised the glass to his lips, his laptop screen abruptly went black. Then, line by line, ominous text began to appear. Did you really think it would be that easy, Mark? Mark's blood ran cold. He recognized the writing style. No, he whispered, his voice trembling. No, no, no. His phone died. The lights in the motel room flickered and went out. In the suffocating darkness, heavy footsteps echoed outside his door. In his opulent Moscow office, Zorov frowned as his connection with Mark was suddenly severed. Barking orders at his subordinates, he demanded answers. But as reports poured in, frozen assets, raids on his properties, and arrest warrants issued in multiple countries, he realized with mounting dread that he had underestimated Alexander Carrington for the final time. Back in New York, Alex watched passively as FBI agents escorted Mark out of the motel in handcuffs. On another screen, Zorov was being led from his Moscow office by Russian authorities. Liam let out a low whistle. Remind me never to get on your bad side, boss. Alex didn't respond. His gaze remained fixed on the monitors, on the empire he had salvaged and the enemies he had dismantled. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt nothing but emptiness. His phone buzzed with a text from Max. Dad, when are you coming home? Alex closed his eyes, the weight of it all pressing down on him. It's over, he murmured. Let's go home. Claire Carrington stood in the lobby of Carrington Tower, her designer outfit in stark contrast to her disheveled appearance. She clutched her handbag tightly, as if it were a lifeline. I need to see Alex. Mr. Carrington, she said hoarsely to the receptionist. Please. It's urgent. The receptionist's eyes widened in recognition, but she maintained her professional demeanor. One moment, please. Upstairs, Alex was reviewing the final reports on Zorov's takedown when his intercom buzzed. Mr. Carrington, your ex-wife is here to see you. Alex's jaw tightened. He considered turning her away, but curiosity won out. Send her up. When Claire entered his office, Alex was standing by the window, his back to her. She hesitated, then took a cautious step forward. Alex, save it, he interrupted, turning to face her. His eyes were cold, devoid of warmth or recognition. What do you want, Claire? She flinched at his tone but pressed on. I've made a terrible mistake. I see that now. I'll leave Mark. I'll do anything. Please, just give me another chance. Alex laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that made Claire recoil. Another chance? You tried to destroy me, Claire. You used our son as a pawn in your games. And now, what? You think batting your eyelashes will make it all go away? He moved to his desk and pressed a button. A holographic display flared to life, projecting social media feeds, news articles, and financial reports. You're finished, Claire. Your name is mud in every circle that matters. No one will hire you, partner with you, or even be seen with you in public. Claire's face crumpled as the weight of her downfall sank in. What have you done? She whispered. I ruined you. Alex replied coldly, just like you tried to ruin me. The difference is, I succeeded. Tears streamed down Claire's face as she collapsed into a chair. What about Max? He needs his mother. Alex's expression hardened further. You lost the right to call yourself his mother when you used him to hurt me. He's better off without you. As if on cue, Alex's phone buzzed with a message from Mark's lawyer. Client willing to make a deal. Full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. Alex held the message up for Claire to see, watching as the last trace of fight left her eyes. It's over, Claire, he said firmly. Mark is going to prison, and he's taking what's left of your reputation with him. Claire stood on unsteady legs, her world in ruins. As she reached the door, Alex's voice cut through the silence one final time. Oh, and Claire, he said, his tone icy, I bought out the Tribune. Andrea Wells won't be writing any more stories about me, or you. The door clicked shut behind her with a sound that felt like a final nail in the coffin. Alex turned back to the window, gazing out at the city he now unquestionably ruled. He had won, utterly and completely. Yet, instead of triumph, he felt a hollow ache in his chest. His phone buzzed again. "Max, Dad, can we have pizza tonight?" A faint smile broke through Alex's stern facade. Perhaps he wasn't entirely hollow after all. In a maximum security prison upstate, Mark Stevens sat on the edge of his cot, staring at the blank wall. His lawyer had just left, confirming that his plea deal had been accepted. A decade behind bars, far better than the life sentence Zorov now faced. As night fell over New York, 3 lives lay in shambles. Claire, once the toast of high society, now a disgraced pariah wandering the streets with nowhere to go. Mark, locked away, his ambitions reduced to ashes. Zorov, his sprawling criminal empire dismantled, awaiting justice in a Russian courtroom. At the pinnacle of it all stood Alexander Carrington, the man who had orchestrated their downfalls. He had won. Completely. In his Moscow penthouse, Zorov stood by the window, a glass of vodka in hand. He stared at the city lights, his reflection in the glass revealing a man consumed by fury and obsession. Alexander Carrington had humiliated him, dismantled his operations, and left him a shadow of his former self. But Zorov was far from finished. His phone buzzed, displaying a text from an unknown number. "It's done. The syndicate is ready." A cold smile crept across Zorov's face. For months, he had been rebuilding his network, calling in favors from the darkest corners of the underworld. Now, backed by an influential Eastern European crime syndicate, he was ready to strike back. Across the ocean, Alex Carrington sat in his office, reviewing quarterly reports. The past few months had been quiet, too quiet. A nagging sense of foreboding lingered, a feeling that something was brewing. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Carrington, we have a situation." Alex's eyes narrowed. "What kind of situation?" "Sir, we're under attack. Massive cyber attacks across all systems. Our firewalls are failing." Alex's jaw tightened. He'd been anticipating retaliation. Initiate Protocol Omega. Now, but as the hours passed, it became clear this was no ordinary assault. Zorov had learned from his mistakes. This time, the attacks were coordinated and relentless, targeting not just Carrington Logistics but Alex's entire empire. Banks reported suspicious activity in Alex's accounts. Sensitive information was leaked to the media, sending stock prices into freefall. Investors panicked, pulling their funds en masse. In the war room, Alex stood amidst a sea of screens, each displaying the chaos engulfing his businesses. Liam Quinn burst through the door, his face grim. "Boss, it's worse than we thought. Zorov's got a team of corrupt lawyers filing international lawsuits against us. Environmental damage, labor violations, you name it. They're trying to bleed us dry." Alex's fist clenched. The battle was far from over. Alex's mind raced, calculating moves and countermoves. Before he could respond, another alert blared. "Sir," his head of security's voice crackled over the intercom, "we've detected an unauthorized entry at your private residence." The line went dead. For the first time in years, Alex felt a cold fear grip his heart. "Get me to the house. Now." The drive to his mansion was a blur. As they approached, signs of a struggle came into view. Broken glass, overturned furniture. Alex charged inside, shouting, "Max? Dad!" Max's voice called out from upstairs. Alex took the stairs 3 at a time, bursting into his son's room. Max was huddled in a corner, shaken but unharmed. Near the window, an unconscious man dressed in black lay sprawled on the floor. "Are you okay?" Alex asked, pulling Max into a tight embrace. Max nodded, his voice muffled against his father's chest. "I remembered what you taught me about being prepared." Alex's throat tightened with a mixture of pride and guilt. He had taught his son to be strong, to survive, but at what cost? As security swarmed the house, Alex's phone rang. The caller ID read unknown. "Mr. Carrington," Zoran's voice came through, smooth as silk. "I trust you have my attention now." Alex's voice was ice cold. "You've made a grave mistake, Zoran." "Oh, I don't think so," Zoran replied, a hint of malice in his tone. "This is just the beginning. I'm going to take everything from you. Your money, your power, your legacy. And when you're left with nothing, broken and begging for mercy, that's when I'll end you." The line went dead. Alex glanced at Max, still clinging to him, then at the chaos around them. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Had he underestimated Zoran? Had his arrogance endangered everything he held dear? But the doubt vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by an icy, unyielding resolve. "Zoran wants a war?" Alex muttered. "We'll give him one." He turned to Liam, who stood ready for orders. Call the team. It's time to end this. The safe house was an unassuming brownstone in a quiet neighborhood. Its basement, however, was a high-tech command center. Alex sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by his most trusted advisors and operatives. Liam Quinn, looking like he hadn't slept in days, stood at his right hand. All right, Alex began, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Zoran thinks he has us cornered. It's time to show him how wrong he is. Liam, what have you got? Liam tapped on a tablet, and holographic displays illuminated the room. We've identified the key players in Zoran's syndicate, his financiers, enforcers, and political connections. They're spread across Eastern Europe and Asia, but they all report to this man. A photo appeared on the screen. A severe-looking man with cold, calculating eyes. Dmitry Volov, Liam continued. Zoran's right-hand man and the mastermind behind the cyberattacks against us. Alex studied the face, committing it to memory. And our plan? Alex asked. We hit them where it hurts, Liam said, a predatory grin spreading across his face. We've got teams ready to move on their money laundering operations in Cyprus, their weapon caches in Ukraine, and their drug routes through Turkey. When we're done, Zoran's entire network will be in chaos. Alex nodded, then turned to his head of legal affairs. And the lawsuits? The lawyer gave a thin smile. Countersuits are ready to file in every jurisdiction. More importantly, we've uncovered evidence of judicial bribery. Once this goes public, half the judges on Zoran's payroll will be facing charges of their own. One by one, Alex's team laid out their strategies: financial maneuvers to freeze Zoran's assets, media campaigns to sway public opinion, and backdoor diplomacy to secure international cooperation in dismantling the syndicate. As the meeting wound down, Alex stood. You all know what's at stake. Zoran thinks he can destroy everything we've built. We're going to show him the true meaning of destruction. Execute the plan. No mercy, no quarter. The team dispersed, each member heading out to set Alex's counterattack into motion. But as the others left, Liam stayed behind. Boss, there's one more thing, he said quietly. I think I've found a way to lure Zoran out into the open. But it's risky. Alex raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Liam laid out his plan. A false lead about a multi-billion-dollar deal in Dubai, too enticing for Zoran to resist. But the plan would require Alex to put himself directly in harm's way. It's dangerous, Liam admitted, but if it works, we can end this once and for all. Alex stood in thoughtful silence, weighing the risks. Finally, he nodded. Do it, but make sure Max is secure. I won't let Zoran use him against me again. As Liam left to set the trap, Alex remained alone in the command center. He thought of Claire, of Mark, and of all the adversaries he'd crushed to reach this point. Zoran was just another in a long line of enemies who had underestimated him, and he would be the last. Thousands of miles away, in a luxurious Moscow apartment, Zoran received an encrypted message. His eyes widened as he read the details of Carrington's supposed deal in Dubai. Prepare the jet, he barked at his assistant. We're going to the Middle East. The pieces were in place. The final battle was about to begin. Days later, Alex stood in the opulent lobby of Dubai's most exclusive hotel, surrounded by the world's business elite. The trap was set. Now, all he had to do was wait for Zoran to take the bait. He didn't have to wait long. A commotion at the entrance drew his attention. Victor Zoran strode in, flanked by bodyguards, his eyes scanning the room until they locked onto Alex. For a moment, the two men stared at each other across the crowded lobby. Then Zoran smiled, a cold, predatory grin, and began making his way toward Alex. But before he could reach him, chaos erupted. Police swarmed in from every entrance, shouting orders in Arabic and English. Zoran's face twisted in rage as realization dawned. Carrington, he roared, lunging forward. But it was too late. Officers tackled him to the ground, snapping handcuffs around his wrists. Alex watched passively as Zoran was led away, still shouting threats and obscenities. It was over. The man who had endangered everything Alex held dear was finished. As the dust settled, Alex's phone buzzed. A text from Liam. It's done. Volov and the others are in custody. The syndicate is finished. Alex allowed himself a small smile. He'd won again. But as he surveyed the chaos he had orchestrated, he felt no joy, no triumph, just a hollow emptiness. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Max. Dad, are you okay? When are you coming home? Alex closed his eyes, suddenly weary. It was time to go home, to face the consequences of the world he had built. Months passed. The world watched in awe as Victor Zoran's criminal empire crumbled, its tentacles severed one by one. Alexander Carrington emerged from the ashes stronger than ever. His company's stock soared to unprecedented heights, cementing his position at the pinnacle of power. In his newly renovated office, Alex stood by the window, looking out over the city he now unquestionably ruled. The skyline was dotted with buildings bearing the Carrington name, a testament to his expanding empire. A knock at the door interrupted his reverie. "Come in," he called, without turning around. Max entered, now a 16-year-old young man and the spitting image of his father. "The board is ready for your presentation on the Zoran acquisition," Max said. Alex nodded, allowing himself a small smile. He had seized control of Zoran's legitimate business assets, expanding his reach into markets he had only dreamed of before. The aftermath of his victory had been fertile ground for his strategic mind, turning near defeat into unparalleled success. As they walked to the boardroom, Alex glanced at his son. Max had seen the darker side of his rise to power, the ruthlessness it took to survive in their world. But he had also witnessed his father's intelligence, resilience, and unwavering determination. "Remember, Max," Alex said as they paused outside the boardroom. "In this world, you're either the predator or the prey. Always be prepared. Always stay 3 steps ahead." Max nodded, his eyes serious. "I know, Dad. You've taught me well." For a moment, Alex saw something flicker in his son's gaze, admiration tinged with caution. Max respected his father's strength and ability to overcome any obstacle, but he was wary of the cold ruthlessness that defined Alex's path to the top. The board meeting unfolded with precision. Alex laid out his plans for further expansion, his strategic brilliance captivating the room. The executives listened in a mix of awe and fear, knowing all too well the consequences of crossing Alexander Carrington. He had proven his dominance time and again, with Claire, with Mark, and now with Zoran. Mercy and forgiveness were luxuries he could no longer afford. Later that evening, Alex stood on the balcony of his penthouse, a glass of scotch in hand. The city sprawled before him, a glittering testament to his power. For the first time, he felt truly untouchable. His mind drifted back to the day Max had innocently asked about prenuptial agreements, a moment that had unknowingly set in motion the chain of events leading him here. What began as a simple conversation had culminated in a battle for survival, one he had won at great cost. The city sparkled below, but Alex's thoughts lingered in the shadows of his victories, where power and sacrifice walked hand in hand. He felt no regret for the choices he'd made or the lives he destroyed. In Alex's mind, they were merely obstacles, challenges to overcome, nothing more. The world was a battlefield, and Alexander Carrington had emerged as its undisputed victor. As the sun set over his empire, Alex allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of his reign. He was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Behind him, he heard the familiar sound of footsteps. Max joined him at the railing, his eyes scanning the glittering cityscape below. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Max said softly. "Everything you've built." Alex nodded, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "And someday, it'll all be yours." Max was silent for a moment, then turned to face his father. "Dad, do you ever wonder, was it worth it? The cost of getting here?" Alex met his son's gaze, seeing in it a warmth and humanity he had long since abandoned. For a fleeting moment, doubt flickered in his mind, but he pushed it aside. "In this world, Max, you take what you want, or watch someone else take it from you. I chose to take it. Remember that." Max nodded slowly, turning back to the view. Yet Alex could see the conflict in his son's expression, a struggle between admiration for his achievements and discomfort with the ruthless methods that had secured them. In that moment, Alex realized something profound. Though he had conquered the world, there was one thing he might never fully possess: his son's unwavering allegiance to his worldview. Max would forge his own path, shaped by but not beholden to his father's legacy. Strangely, Alex found he was at peace with that. Perhaps it was Max's role to be the one thing his empire had lacked: a moral compass. A reminder of the humanity Alex had sacrificed on his relentless climb to the top. As night fell over the city, father and son stood side by side, overlooking the empire they would shape together. The future stretched out before them, full of untold possibilities and challenges yet to come. Alexander Carrington had won his war. Now, it was time to secure a legacy that would endure for generations. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Ex-wife cheated, got an STD, and now she's desperate for help after I became rich and successful. You've emerged victorious while I've suffered defeat. You walk away with property, money, and an upgraded partner. The hotel room is yours tonight, along with the arrangements I've made. Please don't return the gift. It would only remind you of your deceit. I'm driving home and have no desire to see you, him, or your associates again. Let me know when your team will collect your belongings. Anything unnecessary will be packed away, symbolizing the mess of our marriage. To quote my father in the Air Force, yay for me and screw you. I'm done serving you. Enjoy your journey. Your acting skills have earned it. 10 years later on a Wednesday morning, I awoke to banging. Rubbing sleep from my eyes, I checked the clock. 8:15 a.m. The noise persisted now at my front door. Who would knock at this hour? I slipped into my robe and slippers, heading downstairs where the knocking grew louder. Peering through the peephole, I saw a disheveled woman. Opening the door, prepared to scold her, I recognized her, older, thinner, her once vibrant hair now tinged with gray. She smelled, her dress worn. She resembled homeless Daisy, who often lurked in the streets or underpasses. In disbelief, I questioned the woman who had once been my wife. "Yes, Mike, it's me. Can I come inside?" she pleaded desperately. "By the way, that's me, Mike Carpenter." "No," I replied, slamming the door in her face. Just then, another knock echoed, accompanied by her sobs. "Please, Mike, I'm begging you, open the door." I flung the door open to prevent further pounding, but remained in the doorway to block her entry. The neighbors already viewed me as peculiar. I didn't want to attract more attention by making a scene on the doorstep. "What do you want?" "I made it clear 10 years ago that I never want to see you again." "Never? What part of that didn't you understand? And why are you here?" "I thought you and Dr. Wonderful were living in Milwaukee." Regaining composure, Daisy wiped her tears and cast me the most longing glance I'd ever witnessed. "Can I come in? I'm hungry, tired, and need to use the restroom." "Please, I'll explain later," she implored, her feet shifting uneasily. With my experience as a teacher, I recognized the telltale signs of imminent urgency. I didn't want her relieving herself on my porch, so I reluctantly swung the door open, gesturing her inside with a silent invitation. "You remember where the bathroom is?" I scolded, a reminder that we once shared this home. "Hurry up." "Thanks," Daisy said, entering. She dropped her suitcase and dashed to the downstairs bathroom. I closed the door, went upstairs for a quick bathroom break, and returned downstairs, finding her still in the bathroom. I went to the kitchen, fired up my Keurig, and brewed coffee. By then, Daisy had returned. "Can I have a cup?" she pleaded. I paused. Torn between anger and restraint, I couldn't slap a woman, and I didn't want trouble. "Yeah, I'm not heartless," I replied, "but I'm not your servant either." So I relented, partly out of curiosity. "I don't have fancy stuff," I said, offering milk and sugar. "Black's fine," Daisy said gratefully. I handed her the cup, watching her trembling hands. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I've got nowhere else to go," she finally admitted. "I used up my last dime on cab fare." "What happened to your beloved Dr. Bruce?" I quipped sarcastically. "Dr. Bruce?" "It fell apart," she stuttered, avoiding my gaze. If my sarcasm had been any sharper, you could have sliced tile with it. I noticed her flinch. After the divorce, we tied the knot, but things soured when Bruce faced a massive medical malpractice lawsuit. Both of us lost our jobs and medical licenses, and we ended up losing everything. Bruce became abusive, blaming me for our situation. "One day I caught him cheating," Daisy tearfully recounted. "So he got a taste of his own medicine," I remarked wryly, remembering our own past drama. "But karma's a kicker, not fun." Daisy whimpered. "Just like it wasn't funny when you publicly tore me apart on our anniversary." I reminded her. "Do you realize it's the 10th anniversary of that night?" "No, I didn't know," Daisy murmured. "Did you report him to the cops?" I asked, showing some compassion. "No, too scared. But I did divorce him. Unfortunately, I was left with next to nothing after the split," Daisy explained. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." "What's your play here?" I questioned. "Sympathy? You might find it in the dictionary between crap and chiropractor." "I despise you. I loathe you as intensely as I once adored you," I snarled. "Now that your world's crumbling, you come crawling back to me. Where are your parents and friends now?" "They've all abandoned me," Daisy sobbed. "No surprises there," I scoffed bitterly. "Did you and the idiot have kids?" "No, never did. Turns out Bruce is infertile. For some reason he blames me for that too," she spat bitterly. "At least the gene pool's safe from you too," I remarked wryly. "Guess something good came from that mess." She wrinkled her nose at me. "What happened to you, Mike? You used to be so caring, so kind." Anger morphed into fury and I squeezed my eyes shut. "You want to know what happened? Look in the mirror. You happened. Thanks to you, I'm incapable of love and trust." "The nice guy finished last," I growled. "But I thought you'd move on, find someone else," Daisy wheezed wide-eyed. "Get real. After what you did, you never once hinted I was just a fallback for you. I thought we had something solid, but you lied. 13 damn years, 10 as husband and wife. Do you think I can trust anyone after that? I took a deep breath. And how many women do you think would want damaged goods? Not that there was a line, I muttered to myself. Still, not a single one came along. So, are you surprised I've turned into a recluse after a decade of licking my wounds? I suppose not, Daisy admitted sheepishly, lowering her gaze. And here you are. What do you want from me, shelter? Care while you wait for Prince Charming to stroll back in? I hoped you'd let me stay just until I get back on my feet, she pleaded. There's a shelter downtown, I pointed out. That's what they're for. That's where my taxes go, to keep people like you off the streets. I tried, but they were full, Daisy confessed. Even the YWCA and the big church downtown had no room. Please, Mike, I'm begging you. I'll do anything, cook, clean, whatever you need. I wanted to lash out, but I held back, glaring at her. She visibly recoiled. What makes you think I'd want you near me? To me, you're contaminated, a walking hazard, I hissed. And then it dawned on me. You've been attempting to sell yourself, I remarked. She lowered her head shyly, tears dripping onto the table as she nodded. How do I appear? No takers, she questioned. I studied her closely before replying. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Perhaps I should depart. Perhaps I should simply fade away and perish in some, Daisy cried. No one desires me anyhow. I watched her sobbing at the kitchen table, feeling a mix of anger and pity. Despite my strong hatred for her, seeing her like this after all these years was jarring. And then there was Bruce, the dirtbag who had taken her from me to mistreat her. My contempt for him was growing. Raised never to use violence against women, I struggled with conflicting emotions. Taking a reluctant breath, I suggested we eat first. Daisy agreed, expressing her hunger. I prepared scrambled eggs and bacon, recalling how Daisy used to make them. Her eyes lit up when I served her, grateful for the cheese on the eggs. As she ate voraciously, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. When she finished, she thanked me for the meal and praised my cooking. She declined more food but asked for another cup of coffee. Sure, I replied, taking her cup. When I returned, she sipped her coffee and seemed to feel better, a little. The food helped, she admitted. Good. The shower might help more, I suggested bluntly. No offense, but you stink. Daisy's face fell. I'm sorry, can I use your shower, please? You know where it is, I said. Towels are where they always are. My robe will be on the door. Don't put it back on after your shower. You can use the washer and dryer for your clothes. As she disappeared into the bathroom, I grumbled about cleaning, then washed dishes, went upstairs to get ready, and reflected on Daisy's departure with Bruce, the betrayal that devastated me. Counseling helped, and I poured my feelings into writing, eventually publishing a book about my experience, bringing some closure. Another factor in maintaining my sanity was my involvement in martial arts. Initially, two senseis urged me to quit due to my intensity during sparring. However, I found guidance from a retired Marine at the community center. Unlike others, he remained composed during our sessions, teaching me to channel my emotions into controlled strikes rather than letting them dictate my actions. It was a challenging skill to master, as evidenced by the bruises I accumulated. Meeting Daisy again took me by surprise, especially seeing her health decline. I wondered if she was sick. Oddly, my anger shifted toward Bruce. Even though I initially wanted to push Daisy away, I hesitated. What if something happened to her? Could I handle the aftermath? The idea of worsening my emotional state and facing potential legal issues wasn't appealing. I decided to get another perspective and called my mom. Morning, Mike, she greeted cheerfully. What's on your mind? Skipping the usual chit-chat, I blurted out, guess who showed up this morning? Now you got me curious. Who? She asked. Daisy, I confessed. I heard her sigh. What's the deal? What does she want? She probed. I recounted Daisy's situation and what she told me. Mom, she looks awful. My gut says I should kick her out, but... You'd regret it if something happened to her, Mom predicted, echoing my worry. Yeah, you're probably right. Plus, she treated Bruce terribly, I added. I know she hurt you deeply, Mom acknowledged, but maybe hearing her out is the wise move. How about I come over later? Knowing Mom's talent for unraveling things, I agreed. Sounds good, Mom. Your input would be invaluable. Let me handle it for now, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, Mom. I really appreciate it, I expressed gratefully. We wrapped up our chat, and I tended to my chores. Slipping into my usual summer gear of a tee and jeans, I went downstairs. Daisy had already started laundry, wearing my old robe and slippers as she waited for me in the living room. I didn't bother to check if she had anything on underneath. The robe was tightly tied, showing dark stains on her legs. Though she smelled better, she didn't look any better. Want a coffee refill? I offered. Yes, please, she accepted. Pouring another cup, I joined her as she sipped. Her shaky hands caught my eye. Thanks, she mumbled. I'll leave once my clothes are done, she added. No hurry, I assured her. I do have some questions if you don't mind, I continued. Sure, Daisy agreed. Bruce faced malpractice claims. Weren't doctors like him insured? I asked. They were, but it turned into a class action. Even though most claims were baseless, the insurance refused coverage due to many judgments against him, Daisy clarified. Some claims were proven true? I probed. The unproven ones were dismissed due to lack of evidence, she explained. But the damage was done. We lost our jobs and licenses. Didn't you have 401 Ks? I questioned. Surprised. Yes, we did. We lived off them for a year, paying hefty penalties, but we lost everything, Daisy lamented. What's Bruce doing now? I chuckled, recalling his earlier dreams. He works as a parking attendant, making about $16 an hour, she revealed. And your plans? I redirected. I thought about office work in the medical field. Despite losing my nursing license, I'm hopeful, Daisy replied quietly. Best of luck, I offered. Transportation and housing, I pressed. I can take the bus or walk, she sighed. I'll figure something out, but it takes money, she acknowledged. And you don't have any, I noted. Expected me to support you until you bounce back, huh? I took a gamble with the question. Yes, Daisy admitted. I get I'm not owed anything, but I hoped, given what I sacrificed in the divorce, you might show some kindness. My infatuation blinded me to your struggles. Now I see assuming was a mistake. You're right, I don't owe you, I affirmed. She seemed defeated, but I sighed and added, but I'm not heartless. You clearly need help. My mom's on her way. She wants to talk before I decide. Of course, Daisy replied, visibly relieved. Your mom's always meant a lot to me and she adored you, I noted. Then, unexpectedly, she said, despite it all, Mom still cared for you. Cared? Daisy asked, surprised. Yes. So you need to be brutally honest with her, understand? I do, I promise, honesty, Daisy assured. And Mike? What? I asked. Thank you, genuinely, for everything, Daisy expressed. Hold off on the thanks, I cautioned. Just then, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole, seeing my mom, so I greeted her with a hug as I let her in. Daisy, goodness, has it really been 10 years? My mom exclaimed, spotting Daisy in my old robe. Both women hugged and exchanged kisses. It's nice to see you again, Lorraine, Daisy replied. Mike, dear, why don't you give us some girl time? My mom suggested. Knowing she wanted privacy, I headed to my home office, closing the door. I surfed the web, looking into the malpractice lawsuit against Dr. Bruce Williams. After some searching, I stumbled upon troubling information. Bruce had reportedly diagnosed around 97% of his 2,000 patients with epilepsy over 4 years. However, many children were misdiagnosed or over-medicated, leading to unnecessary treatments and procedures. Daisy was often implicated as an accomplice. The hospital had to refund $300,000 for improper billing, prompting their termination and license revocation. Reading this, I was appalled. Bruce seemed to be the ringleader, with Daisy following his lead. My mother interrupted, expressing concern about Daisy's health and suggesting a visit to Dr. McGregor. Her grave tone weighed heavily on me. Terry McGregor had been our family doctor for years, and Mom had worked for him until retiring recently. Why, Mom? I pondered. I can't diagnose, but I've seen many cancer cases in women. I bet she needs urgent medical attention, but she didn't stop there. I know Daisy has strained your bond, and I understand, Mom admitted. But if she's dealing with health issues, we should help. It's the right thing. She gave me a small, lopsided smile. I never said being a Christian was easy, did I? Plus, Michael James Carpenter, your father and I didn't raise you to be cold-hearted, did we? I wrinkled my nose, returning her smile, and shook my head. So, she went on, I called Dr. McGregor. He'll see her today and run tests. If they find anything, they'll refer her to a specialist and assist with Medicaid. She'll change, and I'll drive her, Mom decided. You can't afford that, I objected. Here, take this. I handed her 2 $100 bills. Thanks, Mike. You're a good son, she acknowledged. Just so we're clear, I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it because of the values you taught me. That doesn't mean I forgive her or take her back, I asserted firmly. Got it, Mom replied quietly. An awkward silence hung in the air. Did she mention that idiot Bruce assaulted her? I finally asked. Yes, she did, Mom confirmed, her face neutral, her voice steady. I nodded briskly. That scoundrel needs consequences, I thought. Another tense silence followed. Keep me updated, I instructed. I will, Mom assured, kissing my forehead before leaving. Exiting my office, I saw Daisy in a different outfit, still worn but clean. "Thanks for breakfast," she murmured timidly. "You're welcome," I replied stiffly. After they left, I locked up and grabbed more coffee, researching Wisconsin's laws on spousal abuse. Sadly, I found the time limit for prosecution was discouraging. Unsure of when Bruce attacked Daisy, I doubted the authorities could act. Feeling frustrated, I briefly considered taking matters into my own hands. To clear my head, I changed and rode my stationary bike, pushing myself through a tough workout. Over the years, I had gone from unfit to fit, sticking to a regular exercise routine. Afterward, feeling refreshed, I showered, dressed, and had a light lunch while catching up on the news. By the time I listened to Mom's message, it was mid-afternoon. "Was wondering where you guys were," I said as I answered the phone. "Just finished with Dr. McGregor," Mom replied wearily. Judging by her tone, Daisy wasn't nearby. "Any updates?" I asked. "McGregor's concerned about Daisy. Test results suggest cervical cancer. He's arranged an appointment with an oncologist for Friday. She's applied for Medicaid and emergency aid. McGregor also suspects physical abuse," Mom disclosed. "We're aware," I acknowledged. She mentioned not eating. Mom continued, her concern evident. "But McGregor thinks it's more severe, lacking essential nutrients." Seeing her worry, I nodded. "It's late. I'll take her for a meal. Grab essentials in her suitcase. She should stay with me. We need to talk," Mom suggested. "Sounds like a plan," I agreed. "Keep me posted." "Love you," Mom said. "Love you too," I replied. About 3 hours later, they were on their way. We settled in the study while Daisy packed. "Sorry for the delay," Mom began. "No worries," I said. "What's the plan?" "Caring for Daisy till her appointment. She still cares for you." "Wanted you to know," Mom explained. "No reconciliation, not after her lies and infidelity," I said firmly. "Understood," Mom replied. "She thinks she can win you back," Mom revealed. "Out of the question," I asserted. "Besides, I've changed." "I miss the old you," Mom admitted. "Can you join us for dinner on Friday?" she asked. "I'll make lasagna." "Absolutely," I agreed. "Your lasagna always brings a smile." We hugged and returned to the front room where Daisy was waiting with her suitcase. "I'll stay with your mom, if that's okay," she said weakly. "That's up to her," I replied, noticing my mom's expression. "Thanks for breakfast and for listening," Daisy said tearfully. "You're welcome," I nodded. "Don't forget about dinner on Friday," my mom reminded unnecessarily. "I'll be there, I promise," I assured her. Over the next 2 days, I kept busy with work and household chores. With school out for summer, I had to tackle curriculum planning and home maintenance. I trusted my mom to take care of Daisy, knowing her resourcefulness in navigating challenges. Finally, Friday arrived. After a shower, I picked up wine and headed to my mom's for lasagna. Arriving at 6:15, Daisy greeted me and led me inside. Mom was busy in the kitchen, and Daisy appeared on the verge of tears. I thanked Daisy as I entered the kitchen, and Mom's face lit up at the sight of the wine. We sat down to enjoy the meal, though Daisy seemed visibly distressed. "How did things go today?" I finally inquired. "We managed to get Daisy's application approved," Mom reported. "Thank goodness for this newfangled internet system. I wish they'd had it when I retired." Observing her forced optimism, I sought reassurance. "So Daisy's medical costs will be covered?" "Yes, and she'll get a monthly allowance from the state. Since she'll be living here, she won't need much," Mom confirmed. "They're pursuing child support, but it's like squeezing blood from a turnip," I muttered grimly. "That's good," I replied. "And the oncologist?" Daisy's expression darkened, signaling ominous news. "They found stage 4 cervical cancer," Mom disclosed. "It's spreading rapidly throughout her body." "Can it be treated?" I asked, grappling with mixed emotions. "Maybe," Mom responded cautiously, with Daisy's consent. They continued. "Survival odds are less than 20%. Treatment's an option, but no guarantees," Mom explained. "Doctors think it started out 4 years ago," Daisy admitted tearfully. "If caught. Earlier, my chances would have been over 90%. "That's terrible. Bruce didn't notice anything," I probed. "No, he never mentioned it," Daisy explained. "I noticed some changes, but I didn't want to worry him." "What kind of changes?" I asked delicately. "Closeness became painful," Daisy confessed. "We stopped altogether for a while." Redirecting the conversation, I said, "New medications might help." "Yes," Mom added. "They could improve her odds by 10 or 15%. "What's your plan?" I asked Daisy. "Fight. I'm not ready to give up," she declared. "And how long will treatment last?" I questioned Mom. "Up to a year, maybe longer," she replied. "Will Daisy stay here?" I pressed. "I think it's best. I'll care for her," Mom assured. Reluctantly, I agreed. "I suppose that makes sense. Can you handle this?" Mom asked. I glanced at Daisy, recalling our history. Memories flooded back of her callous actions with Bruce. Daisy noticed my change in demeanor. "I know you don't trust me, but," she started. "Understatement," I sharply interjected. "If you injure my mother or cause trouble, I'll kick you out, cancer or not. Understand?" "Yes," Daisy replied quietly, tears welling. Mom intervened, suggesting dessert. "I can help," I offered, but Mom declined. "You two could use some time alone," she said, leaving. Daisy wiped her face. "I started reading your book," she said. "Was I that terrible?" "I have footage from that night," I revealed. "Would you like to see it?" Daisy declined, stunned. "No wonder you despise me," she said, sobbing. "It's all in the book," I continued. "I imagined revenge for years." Daisy was horrified. "Yolanda suggested exercise," Mom added, bringing apple pie. "That's why you look so good now?" Daisy asked. "Yes," I confirmed. "I've been doing martial arts and fitness." "But you're still angry," Daisy observed. "It's better," Mom reassured. 2 years ago, you wouldn't have even come through the door." "I'm truly sorry, Mike. I really am. I knew it would hurt, but I didn't anticipate it would devastate you like this. That's why I gave you everything in the divorce. I thought it would aid in your recovery. When you didn't contest it, I assumed you'd be all right," Daisy explained. "To be honest, my lawyer was taken aback when he saw your petition. He urged me to sign it swiftly, fearing you might reconsider," I confessed. "Have you dated anyone since then?" Daisy asked tentatively. "Not really," I replied bluntly. "Just a couple of drunken one-night stands, but that's about it. I don't even recall their names." I noticed my mother's eyebrows shoot up, a look of disgust crossing her face, but she held back her thoughts. At that moment, I didn't care about her reaction. "Oh God," Daisy sighed. "I don't know what to say. A sorry won't be enough, will it?" "No," I replied bitterly. We ate pie in silence, Daisy's hurt evident, and I avoided looking at Mom's face. After saying goodbye, Mom walked me to the door where I spoke quietly. "Are you sure you're doing the right thing, Mom?" I asked. "What about her family? Can't they help?" "I called her parents and sister, but they refused to help," Mom replied sadly. "What a screwed-up family," I muttered. "You didn't abandon me," I told Mom. "Despite turning bitter, family takes care of family." "I agree," Mom said tearfully. "What are Daisy's chances really?" I asked. Mom looked at Daisy before answering. "It's hard to say. Progress has been made in treatment, but it's uncertain. A lot depends on her will to live." Ignoring that, I expressed concern for my mom's well-being. "What if she does something behind your back?" I worried. "I know you don't trust her, but she's at rock bottom right now." "People with nothing have nothing to lose," I reasoned. "Be careful. If you need anything, let me know," I urged. "I will," Mom promised. "Thanks for dinner." "I'll be in touch. Love you," I said. "Love you too, son," Mom replied, kissing my cheek. "Please try to keep your emotions in check," Mom requested. "Don't push her further," she pleaded. "I'll try," I sighed heavily. "That's all I ask," Mom said, "and I promise not to play matchmaker." "Thank you," I smiled before leaving. The next 2 months flew by as I tackled home projects and prepared for the upcoming school year. On Fridays, I visited my mom's house for dinner. I witnessed Daisy's chemotherapy taking a toll, weakening her. Despite the treatment's intent to heal, it seemed ineffective in her case. By mid-August, she lost all her hair, donning a stylish chemo cap. While my feelings for her remained unchanged, I made an effort to be polite, mainly for my mom's peace of mind. Daisy began receiving deductions from Bruce's paycheck, albeit small. She opened a bank account, with Mom overseeing the funds. Daisy insisted on sharing with Mom for expenses. Mom agreed, setting aside 10% for emergencies. On the eve of the new school year, I arrived at Mom's house to find an unfamiliar car parked outside. The sight of Bruce triggered an unsettling feeling. Mom and Daisy seemed apprehensive. Bruce appeared disheveled, a stark contrast to his former self. The restrained part of my mind reacted with restrained aggression. Observing Bruce's decline, he lacked his previous commanding presence, appearing unkempt in dirty jeans and a shirt. "Well, look who it is, the arrogant teacher," Bruce sneered arrogantly. My animosity towards him had peaked. Though I'd never been in a physical altercation before, my martial arts training had taught me to avoid fights whenever possible. Even if you emerge victorious, the repercussions can linger for a lifetime. "What's your business here, Bruce?" I asked icily. "I want the money that woman took from me," he growled. "Took? I thought the court mandated a portion of your income for alimony," I stated evenly, though my gaze probably conveyed my disdain. "It's all the same. They seized my funds and now I'm facing eviction because I can't pay rent," Bruce hissed. "Thanks to her, you had the money to travel here from Milwaukee," I pointed out. You could have used it for rent. Don't play games, teacher. Maybe I should have taught you a lesson 10 years ago, he threatened. She stopped me, insisted I treat you with respect for looking after her all those years, Bruce threatened. How about you leave and we pretend none of this happened, I suggested cautiously, raising my hands in an attempt to defuse the situation that could lead to a violent confrontation, leaving me with bruises and a few well-timed counterattacks. But he likely didn't know Daisy's condition. She was ill, battling cancer, and she needed support. Cancer, huh? Is that another one of her lies? Bruce scoffed, placing his soda and sandwich aside before producing a revolver from behind him. Funny, I happen to have the cure for that, he taunted, aiming the weapon at Daisy. Bruce, please, my mom pleaded, gesturing towards her phone on the table. The emergency operator likely heard our entire exchange. Please, I've already called the police, they're on their way. I began to position myself between Bruce and Daisy, but he swiftly directed the weapon toward me. Desperation was evident in his eyes. Mentally, I retreated. I hadn't come this far, survived this much, to be senselessly shot by a cop. Stay put, teacher. Not one move, Bruce warned, his hands trembling. In that instant, we spotted flashing red and blue lights outside the front window and heard a voice over the intercom. Mr. Williams, this is the police. The house is surrounded. We're aware you're armed. Drop your weapon and come out with your hands up, the officer instructed. You should listen, I warned Bruce, who stared wide-eyed. How did they know about my weapon? Bruce inquired. I informed them. I saw it tucked in your waistband, Mom disclosed. And Mike's right, follow their orders. This is your final chance, Mr. Williams. Surrender the weapon and exit the premises, the officer commanded through the speaker. Glancing at us, Bruce seemed to grow increasingly uneasy. Our eyes met briefly, and I noticed his resolve waver. If you were wise, you'd comply, I advised. There won't be another warning. As the back door opened, 2 officers suddenly appeared in the room, pistols drawn, aimed at Bruce. Drop your weapons, one ordered. Bruce turned, eyes widening as he realized he was facing 2 loaded weapons. Recklessly, he raised his firearm, but the officers fired first. Despite the ringing in my ears, Daisy's scream pierced through, shocking me. 2 more officers entered the room as my mom reacted, clutching an heirloom. Frozen, I watched as officers attended to Daisy and my wounded mom, while 2 others knelt beside Bruce. 1. Officer confirmed Bruce's death, leaving me shaken. Despite feeling a mix of relief and resentment, I steadied my mom. Paramedics arrived, determining Bruce's fate and attending to Daisy. I offered to accompany my mom to the hospital. At the crime scene, detectives took our statement and advised us to leave. They assured us of securing the house and provided a cleaning service recommendation. Driving to the hospital, my mind spun with conflicting emotions. At the hospital, we navigated bureaucracy, eventually settling in the waiting area for Daisy's surgery. Finally, the doors parted and a doctor approached us. Mrs. Carpenter, he inquired. Yes, that's me, Mom confirmed. How's Daisy? Miss Williams is stable and improving. I anticipate she'll pull through the gunshot wound. Fortunately, the bullet passed through without hitting any critical organs. She's fortunate, the doctor informed us. Just a tad to the left, and it could have been fatal. Thank the Lord, Mom breathed a sigh of relief. She's lost considerable blood, and her compromised state due to cancer and chemotherapy isn't in her favor. However, we've detected something else and informed her oncologist, the doctor disclosed. Oh? What's that? Mom inquired. I'm aware she's undergoing chemotherapy, but we've detected what seems to be signs of infection in her system. I've ordered a battery of tests as a precaution, he explained. Oh dear, Mom sighed. Will she be all right? It's too early to say. She's currently sedated. We'll need to keep her here for a minimum of 3 days. May we visit her? Mom requested. I'm afraid not. Perhaps tomorrow morning at the earliest. Let me provide you with a card. You can reach this number anytime for updates and to learn her room assignment, he said, handing Mom the card. We drove back to Mom's house in silence, with her crying most of the way. My thoughts were consumed by the surreal situation. Daisy, whom I once harbored dark fantasies about, was now fighting for her life in the hospital. Despite feeling a pang of remorse, I pushed the thoughts aside. Arriving home, I noticed the crime scene tape discarded in the trash, and a note from the detective declaring the scene cleared. Mom wasted no time in cleaning up, while I disposed of the chair Daisy had been shot in. Upon my return, I found Mom on her knees, tears mixing with the blood as she scrubbed the floor. Offering help, she declined, determined to manage alone. I suggested she stay at my place, but she insisted on staying. Respecting her decision, I resolved to stay with her despite her protestations. I offered to cook dinner before we turned in. Sharing a knowing look, we agreed a glass of wine would be a fitting end to a tumultuous day. As she resumed cleaning, her movements became more frantic. Concerned about potential nightmares, we found solace in a glass of wine or sheer exhaustion, sleeping deeply until morning. We moved through the house quietly until the phone interrupted our somber atmosphere around 10. I retreated to the kitchen to give her privacy, and when she joined me minutes later, she relayed Daisy's condition, serious but stable, undergoing tests with an expected return to her room by mid-afternoon. Lost in thought, I barely registered any emotions. She interrupted my introspection, requesting a ride to the hospital at 2:30. I agreed, departing early to handle errands before meeting her at her house and proceeding to the hospital. After purchasing gifts for Daisy, including her favorite flowers and a book, Mom teased me playfully at the register, prompting me to defensively brush off any deeper sentiment. But her words lingered, reminding me that feelings, even complex ones, were valid. Afterward, we headed to Daisy's room. Though awake, she appeared drained. Mom planted a kiss on her cheek and passed her the purchased card. Her eyes sparkled when she noticed the flowers. "My favorites! You remembered!" she exclaimed, surprised. Her voice, though weak, held a pleasant tone. "Yes," I responded, extending the novel. "If I recall correctly, you were reading it when you left with Bruce," I added, my voice devoid of emotion, though a slight pang hit my gut. "Yes, I did read it, but never got to finish." "Thank you," she murmured softly, not meeting my gaze as she thumbed through the paperback. "Any updates?" Mom inquired. "Not yet," Daisy answered, shaking her head. She closed the book but held on to it tightly as if it were a cherished possession, nestling into it like a teddy bear. She added, "They said I probably won't hear anything for at least a day." "That's okay," Mom agreed. Then the nurse chimed in. "How are you feeling?" "Terrible," Daisy groaned. "I'm exhausted, my side and stomach ache." "They'll figure it out," Mom comforted. "And Bruce?" Daisy inquired, still avoiding my gaze. "He was pronounced dead at the scene," Mom informed her. "Good," Daisy stated firmly, finally showing some strength. "I'm glad he's dead." Mom's expression darkened, but she remained silent, gently patting Daisy's hand and nodding in understanding. I stayed quiet while the women conversed. Hearing my ex-wife denounce Bruce eased some of the pent-up animosity, yet it couldn't erase a decade of bitterness. A nurse entered, checking Daisy's vital signs and administering medication. "Time for your meds, Daisy," the nurse said, handing her a cup of pills. Daisy swallowed them with water, expressing exhaustion. "Call me Daisy," she requested, showing resilience despite her weariness. "I'll inform the staff," the nurse said, suggesting rest for Daisy. Mom inquired about test results, and the nurse assured they'd have news by tomorrow morning. After exchanging farewells, I noticed Daisy's longing glance as we left. I offered a faint smile before closing the door. After dropping off my mom, I returned home to tackle my weekend tasks. The following morning, we convened in Daisy's hospital room. Mom, a part-time volunteer, had arrived a couple of hours earlier. Soon after my arrival, 2 doctors entered. I was introduced to Dr. Samuels, Daisy's surgeon, and Dr. Kincaid, her oncologist. Though they tried to appear assured, their concern was palpable. "What's the update?" I inquired, eager for positive news despite their demeanor. Dr. Kincaid responded first. "Miss Williams is grappling with both peritonitis and diverticulitis, which can account for some of the symptoms you've mentioned previously." Dr. Samuels elaborated. "Mrs. Carpenter," he addressed my mom, taking over the report, "our scans have detected several large pockets of infection in Daisy's abdomen. Furthermore, we suspect her gallbladder is perforated and will need to be removed." "How did this occur?" I inquired, feeling my mom's hand tighten around mine. "There are likely multiple factors, but it appears she had an underlying condition exacerbated by cancer and chemotherapy medications," Dr. Kincaid responded. "What's the next step?" my mom asked softly. "She will eventually require surgery to eradicate the infection and repair the damage, but we'd like to allow her body more time to recover from the recent surgery she underwent. So, we'll keep her here on antibiotics for the next couple of weeks to monitor if the infection subsides naturally. Chemotherapy will be paused during this period," Dr. Samuels explained. "What are her odds?" I asked, striving to maintain composure. The doctors exchanged glances before replying. I didn't like the gravity in their expressions. "I won't sugarcoat it," Dr. Samuels began. "Without surgery, her prospects are grim. Her body is currently delicately balanced. Administering high doses of antibiotics could potentially disrupt her metabolism and further weaken her, potentially even leading to a fatal outcome. Although the current antibiotic regimen seems to have halted the infection spread and is gradually reducing it, it won't mend the damage. While there's no visible perforation in the bowel wall, she was likely on the brink of it when we intervened. Exploratory surgery aimed at identifying unseen issues carries significant risks at this point. Manipulating the intestines could inadvertently worsen the situation. Our goal is to cleanse the intestines of infection and mend any damage. She must be robust enough to endure surgery and chemotherapy afterward. Malnutrition has severely debilitated her, and she won't withstand chemotherapy until the infections are eradicated and her other bodily functions normalize. Peritonitis alone poses a grave threat, and coupled with cancer, he trailed off with a shrug. The surgery itself poses significant risks, Dr. Kincaid interjected. Very significant, considering the extent of infection in her abdomen and the damage to her internal organs. Her chances of survival are estimated to be between 30 and 40%. So without surgery, my chances are slim to none, queried Daisy solemnly. Though her eyes were wide and she appeared to be sweating, her voice remained steady. Unfortunately, that appears to be the case, confirmed Dr. Kincaid. However, once you recover from the surgery, you should be able to proceed with chemotherapy without complications. In that case, it seems we have no alternative but to proceed with the surgery, Daisy conceded weakly, sinking back onto the bed. Very well. We'll organize everything accordingly, declared Dr. Samuels. With their departure, Daisy broke into tears. Her mother embraced her, offering solace. Don't fret, Daisy. You have the finest medical team in the hospital on your side. Everything will work out, she reassured Daisy amid her sobs. I had much to contend with, and this wasn't the place for it. It was odd. Not long ago, I might have welcomed news of Daisy's demise, but now my emotions were in turmoil. I have to head out. School starts tomorrow, but I'll check in on you from time to time, I offered. Yeah, I'd appreciate that, Mike, Daisy exclaimed. Mom smiled at me. We left the room and I walked her to her car, waving as she drove away. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept my promise, visiting Daisy several times. We discussed various topics, from my teaching and students to her failed marriage with Bruce and our own failed marriage. We also delved into our emotions and the events that led us here. During one visit, I brought up her family. I'm curious, I began. What? Daisy asked. What's the deal with your family? Why do they dislike you so much? Mom reached out to them, but they want nothing to do with you. Remember when I mentioned they disowned me after the lawsuit? Daisy recalled. Yes, I remember, I replied. What I didn't tell you is they knew about Bruce from the start. They agreed to keep you in the dark, and in return, Bruce promised to support them in retirement. He even offered to buy them cruise tickets. And you and your sister knew about this? I asked, feeling anger rising. Daisy looked down in shame. Yes, she whispered before meeting my gaze again. It was another betrayal. I know, and I'm deeply sorry. So your family used you and Bruce, just like you used me, I observed, my tone icy. She looked miserable. I tempered my emotions. If you don't want the answer, don't ask the question. Mostly, Daisy admitted sorrowfully. Things went downhill after the lawsuit, and my family wanted nothing to do with me. That explains their treatment of me after you left, I remarked. It also sheds light on why you thought it was acceptable to use me while waiting for Bruce. Everyone seemed to have the upper hand except me. Reinforcing my belief that reconciliation with Daisy was unlikely, given all that had transpired, Daisy seemed to share this sentiment, showing no initiative to revive what we once had. However, as we reconciled, I glimpsed the woman I fell in love with, sparking hope. Surprisingly, my animosity towards her and Bruce lessened after his demise, although I still wished for his just punishment beyond this life. Mr. Smith granted me the day off for Daisy's surgery, arranging for a substitute teacher. At the hospital, I expressed my worries before she was wheeled into the operating room. I've said hurtful things and I'm sorry, I began. I hope you can overcome this. Daisy's weak smile surprised me. Thank you, Mike. I accept your apology. I'm sorry for what I've done to you, she confessed. I love you, and you've endured more than you should have. Promise me something, she implored. What? I inquired. Find someone you love no matter what, she sincerely urged. I agreed, feeling a sense of absolution. We need to proceed to the operating room, sir, the orderly interrupted. For one moment, I requested. Spontaneously, I kissed Daisy's cheek. You've got this, I reassured her. For a brief moment, she resembled the woman I married, prompting me to wonder if she ever truly loved me beyond my role as a provider. I rose, feeling a bit lightheaded as the orderly guided her gurney out of the room. That was kind of you, Mike, Mom murmured softly as we followed into the operating room. After she was wheeled inside, we settled in the waiting area. Hours passed while the surgery progressed. Attempting to focus on the TV proved futile. My thoughts remained fixated on the tumultuous events of the past decade. Mom crocheted quietly while I paced, drowning myself in one cup of machine-made coffee after another, trapped in a relentless cycle of memories. 6 hours later, Dr. Samuels emerged from the operating room with a troubling expression. He motioned for us to join him in a nearby room, where he sat across from us, visibly weary. I braced for bad news, fearing he might break down in tears. Mom's grip on my hand was so tight it made my fingers ache, and I anticipated his words before he uttered them. "I'm deeply sorry, Mrs. Carpenter, Mr. Carpenter. We did everything within our power for Daisy. However, the level of infection and damage to her internal organs was too severe," he conveyed with sorrow. Her body ceased functioning. She had signed a DNR and a form consenting to donate her body to cancer research. Despite our ethical efforts, once her heart stopped, we were unable to revive her. "Please accept my condolences for your loss." Instantly, tears streamed down Mom's face, and though I felt a tear welling up in my eye, I refused to let it fall. I embraced my mother as she wept, nodding in acknowledgement to the doctor. "Thank you for all your efforts," I expressed to him. We exchanged a handshake, and I noticed a tear escaping from his eye. Once Mom had composed herself, we walked back to Daisy's room in a daze. We packed her belongings in silence, knowing words were unnecessary. In the bedside table drawer, I discovered a small envelope labeled Mike in Daisy's handwriting. I opened it and unfolded the letter inside. "Mike," the letter commenced, "you will only read this if I do not survive. Thank you for being there for me, especially in these last weeks. You owe me nothing, but you and your mother stood by me when others deserted me. I realize what I did to you a decade ago was inexcusable, and I deeply regret causing you pain. Despite everything, a part of me still loves you, and I'm sorry for the turmoil my involvement with Bruce has caused me. I understand that you will never feel the same toward me, and I respect that. My hope is that my passing will bring you peace at last. With love, Daisy." The note left me trembling, tears streaming down my face as I showed it to my mom. It unleashed a torrent of emotions. We shared, crying and holding each other, the first time I'd wept since my father's passing 6 years ago. Packing Daisy's belongings, I realized a profound change within me. A decade of anger and bitterness evaporated, replaced by an unexpected calmness. Her passing seemed to break down walls of resentment, offering me a way out of the dark maze I'd been trapped in. Strangely, her passing brought healing. After leaving the hospital in a daze, we settled Daisy's things at my mom's house, sharing a sober dinner. Later, she handed me a photo of Daisy smiling in her mother's chair during chemotherapy, a memento to cherish. Asking about contacting Daisy's family, my mom offered to call, but I declined, recalling a previous difficult conversation. Instead, I promised to make the call once home, taking the number she provided. Calling Daisy's father, Fred, I was met with hostility, leaving me puzzled by his animosity, considering their refusal of support and retirement crews. "I regret to inform you that your daughter Daisy passed away during surgery today," I conveyed. "I don't have a daughter named Daisy," Fred grumbled. "Not anymore," I clarified. "Why are you calling?" Fred inquired. "I just thought you might want to know," I responded. "What do you want from me?" Fred questioned. "Are you expecting us to request her body or something?" I countered, "No, she donated her body to cancer research," I disclosed, barely containing my frustration. "Well, at least her life served a purpose," he growled. "Don't call here again." I heard him curse before terminating the call. Although I felt the urge to call back and vent my anger, I realized it would be futile. With a sigh, I dialed my principal's number and informed him of the news. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mike," he sympathized. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied, "but I'll be okay." "Say, why don't you take the remainder of the week off, and I'll mark it as paid parental leave. I'll arrange for a substitute." "Thank you. I really appreciate it," I expressed. After concluding our conversation, I retrieved a beer from the fridge. As I opened the bottle, I gazed at the photo my mom had given me. "Here's to you, kid," I murmured, taking a deep sip. In June, I drove to the cemetery, always feeling uneasy among reminders of mortality. Parking under a large maple tree, I made my way to the monument. Despite its newness, it bore the name Williams, a decision I reluctantly accepted due to bureaucratic insistence. I placed a white carnation in the bronze flower tube beside the monument, reflecting on the decision to bury Daisy's ashes rather than scatter them. Bruce, on the other hand, lay in a neglected corner, marked only by a simple concrete block with a serial number. Afterward, I poured a bottle of urine on his grave, a solitary act of closure. If anyone caught me urinating on his grave, I'd have some explaining to do. After a few minutes of reflection, I bid him farewell. All my tears were shed last week at her burial. Despite reaching out to Daisy's family and friends, I figured if Joe DiMaggio could honor Marilyn for 2 decades, I could lay Daisy to rest and leave her carnations. Sometimes, amidst the grayness, I felt neither sad nor happy, but like an empty blackboard waiting to be filled. Heading back to my car, I noticed 2 other mourners nearby. A woman in a neat black dress, her long blonde hair braided, and a young boy in a camouflage jacket. Approaching them, I glanced at the sign, Ryan G. Angers, Sergeant, USMC. The woman looked at me with fear in her blue eyes. "I'm sorry," I murmured, not wanting to intrude. Before she could respond, the boy said, "I miss him so much," his eyes reflecting the same shade of blue as his mother's, his words laden with longing, perhaps seeking solace or reaching out for help. He must have been a handsome man if he resembled his father. I knelt down, pulling out a notepad and pen from my pocket, tools I used more than my phone's note function. "Here, son," I said, offering them to him. "Write him a note and tuck it in that crack next to the marker. He'll get it." He hugged me, took the notebook and pen, and began writing. As he did, his mother gazed at me with genuine gratitude. Suddenly, I heard 2 soft chuckles, one in each ear, a female and a male. Then the female voice whispered, "Keep your promise." In that moment, I sensed June would no longer be a struggle for me.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
The 12-hour flight to Thailand was wearing on me, and with another 12 hours to go, the cramped economy seat felt more like a torture chamber with every passing minute. Fatigue was setting in, but it was accompanied by a buzz of excitement. I was on my way to becoming an expatriate, or expat, as they're called in Thailand. 2 years after my divorce, I had finally cashed in my chips. I took my share of the house equity, half the savings, and a secret nest egg my ex-wife never knew about, and set course for the land of smiles, planning to settle there for good. With my resources, I could enjoy a comfortable retirement. Eventually, when I became eligible to tap into my 401k, I'd have even more financial freedom. My ex had tried to claim a share of that, but I reminded her that I had enough evidence of her infidelity to send to everyone we knew, including her parents. That was enough for her to back down. Sometimes I think about sending it anyway, just out of spite. My feelings for her have boiled down to pure hatred for the betrayal and destruction she brought into my life. In the end, the divorce was relatively smooth. We went with irreconcilable differences rather than adultery, though she deserved to have her actions laid bare. I wasn't interested in wasting my energy on revenge. I just wanted to move on and escape as far as possible from the memories and the pain. I had been to Thailand 20 years earlier when I was in the service. I liked the food, weather, and the women, so I decided to begin my new life there. I needed the change. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Things had to be a lot different there after all these years. I certainly was not the same man. The wounds from too many battles left me tired and scarred. I figured whatever fate awaited me had to be better than the hellish loneliness that I left behind. My name is Arthur Lee Allen. I know what you're thinking. It's not my fault. My mother was a big fan of American Western history, especially gunslingers, hence the name. I kind of liked it. In Thailand, the name would hold no special meaning. Everything would be new there. I would be a stranger in a very strange land. I had nothing to lose. My son, who rarely spoke to me, was about to finish college. The only women I was able to date back in New York were divorced, overweight, bitter, and carrying more baggage than a freight train. At 49, I was in pretty good shape with a touch of gray in my hair. I was often told that I didn't look a day over 35. I certainly wasn't ready to pack it in. Since there wasn't a lot of sex going on for me after the divorce, the gym became my sanctuary. My abs are flat and my muscles hard. I was never much of a ladies' man, shy, I guess. Some ego reinforcement and a chance to regroup were badly needed. I yearned to feel manly again and in control of my life. "You look deep in thought, young man," said the man sitting directly to my right. I hadn't said much to him during the trip. He looked to be about 60-something. His face showed the wisdom of a life hard-lived. He seemed to sense my mood. I just left my entire life back in the States. I sure hope I'm doing the right thing." "You'll be fine, son," he said, smiling. "I'm Gary Francis," he said, extending his hand. He had the quiet bearing of a man who knew what he was talking about. "I'm Arthur Lee Allen. Pleased to meet you," I answered, reading his mind. He didn't comment on the name. The old man looked glad for the company. "Glad to meet you, Arthur. I've lived in Thailand 22 years. I have often thought of moving back to the States, but I never will. I will spend my last days in Thailand. I guess you could say I'm a battle-hardened old veteran of the game." I thought of him as the old man in the military sense of using the term to describe a respected commanding officer. "Game? What game?" I said, now intrigued. He looked at me with the patience of a wise and seasoned teacher. The use of the word son drew me to him. For some reason, I trusted him immediately. You will experience some of the most selfless acts of kindness and generosity imaginable, as well as considerable lies, deceit, and manipulation for the purpose of separating you from your cash. It's the way it is, their way of life. You are about to enter a world of fantasy, son. For them, it's about survival. Pensions and social security are not the rule there. For most Thais, there is no safety net. The object of the game is to survive their world with your wallet, integrity, and pride intact while having as much fun as possible. Many a man has checked his brain at the airport and lived to regret it. He shared with me much of what he had learned. I felt like I should be taking notes. I paid real close attention to his words. I suddenly started to feel overwhelmed and anxious. You've got to understand that the rules will be different when you leave this plane. What are the rules? Well, to start with, you have never seen so many available beautiful young women. Smile, and they will treat you better than you could ever imagine. Many will try to train you, then exploit you. It can be difficult to sort out what is real. Believe half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. For example, the lady boys are some of the most beautiful women you will see. The Thais call them katois. Lady boys? Is that like gay? I asked, innocently. More than gay, they are pre-op and post-op transsexuals. Some of them are truly amazing. It's all an illusion. Much of what you think you see will be an illusion. That's just the beginning. The famous Thai smile is both a sword and a shield. It doesn't mean the same thing as a smile back home. If they smile, you smile. It's also your sword and shield. You will learn as you go along. Just remember, don't surrender your power and make yourself happy. It's time in your life to think about your needs. Compromise is okay, but don't sacrifice too much. Stay in control, stay strong. Set limits and see with your eyes and brain, not your little willy. If something doesn't feel correct, it probably isn't. Thai women have no respect for a chicken, so don't allow that to happen. Why would I do that? In Thailand, it's easier than you would think. A guy like you is a ripe target. You want companionship and sex. They want money. You are not the predator in the land of smiles. You're the prey. They will strip your wallet and heart to the bone and laugh at you for being stupid enough to let them. I struggled to absorb all of what he said. One more thing. Feel free to fall in love. That is with a different lady every day. We expats call them LBFMs. What's that? Little brown sex machines, Gary answered, smiling as his mind flashed back to another place and time. Most of the ladies of the night are not wife material. They are prostitutes. Some idiots call them sex workers. If she sells sex for a living, she's a prostitute. If she's been in the game longer than a month or two, forget about it. She's damaged goods. Don't forget that. Treat them with respect, pay them in the morning, and send them on their way. Their jealousy and possessiveness are based on ownership of clients, not love. It looks like affection or love, but that's not what it is. Play with them, as they are most certainly are playing with you. And don't put up with any shit. If she starts to throw things or get violent, put her out. That's how you play the game, son. Is that all I have to look forward to? Don't get me wrong. If you find a so-called good girl, you might find a woman that would make an excellent life companion. Look for them in areas away from where Farang usually go. However, their family and friends will usually have higher priority than you. If you are real lucky, you might find one that thinks more like a girl back home. Ironically, it's their exotic nature that's so appealing. At the same time, it's like dealing with creatures from another planet. Beware, my friend. Many good girls have adopted the tactics of their more unscrupulous sisters. Learn some Thai. If you don't let them know that you understand their conversations, you'll learn a lot. Farang. It means foreigner. Often it is used negatively by Thais. You will never be totally accepted by Thai society. You and I will always be foreigners. Yours odds improve if she is educated and older than 30. The young girls are just too full of themselves. Most of them don't realize they have a short self-life. Just don't look for your dream girl in a go-go bar. Think of them as attractions in an adult Disneyland. A nice place to visit, but you don't want to live there. The working girls are fun. Accept them for what they are. Love him and leave him. One more thing. Remember, the Farang always pays. They know you are richer than them, therefore, they feel no guilt about you picking up the tab. Good luck, son. You're going to need it. Every day will be an adventure. Expect the unexpected. Don't expect the law to offer any protection. The biggest mafia in the country are the police. Thanks, I'll remember what you said. At least my eyes will be open when the plane lands. I owe you. I hope that our paths cross again. I'm sure we'll talk again, he replied. Your advice is greatly appreciated. I don't know if I'm ready for this. He gave me his phone number. I knew I would be calling him, sooner or later. The plane landed, and we set off to follow our individual destinies. As soon as I left the airport, the Bangkok air enveloped me. It was hot and humid. I started sweating immediately. The air smelled of unknown plant life, auto exhaust, Thai spices, and elements I could not identify. It would take me a while before I adjusted to my new home. I bought a condo and settled into my new life. The next several months were a haze of bars and women. Each promised to love me long time as long as I bought them drinks, paid the bar fine, the fee to take a girl out of the bar, and paid them about 2,000 baht, $50 to $60, the next morning. I never forgot that it was all about the money. All of them very happy to see my money. They truly loved my wallet. As soon as I would enter my favorite bar, I would be surrounded by 3 or 4 near-naked women. I was aware that what I truly wanted, I couldn't buy. A very pretty girl told me that she missed every day and she happy for my return. That was strange. I had never seen her before. I met many expats who had been playing the game for years. They were dedicated sex mongers, commonly called punters. To each his own, I guess. None that I met seemed really happy. They drank a lot and complained about the Thai way of doing things constantly. After a while, it looked like I had traded one kind of hell for another. They seemed to be lonely even with 2 beautiful girls sitting on their lap. To me, life had to have some meaning greater than mindless hedonistic self-gratification. Sex without love or real intimacy gets old real quick. Every place I went in Soy Cowboy, Nana Plaza, and Pat Pong, I was greeted with, "Hi handsome man. What your name? You want buy me drink and pay bar fine me? Oh, you so big. Where you stay? Let's go your hotel. I love you too much." They were all different, yet the same. I couldn't believe my eyes when I entered my first go-go bar. It was Susie Wong's, I think, in Soy Cowboy. There were at least 40 topless dancers flirting with big-bellied customers from all over the world. Some of them danced, while others shuffled their feet. Many of the men were obnoxious and drunk, and the women were young and sexy. The music was loud and smoke hung heavy in the air. It struck me as a strip club on steroids. Every female in sight was on sale. The dancers wore numbers. All a man had to do was tell them a massin what number he wanted, and the dancer would come to his table to talk business. Most wanted a quick short-time trip to a nearby hotel so they could get back and try it again. The entire place, and the others like it, was a commercial sex machine. If a guy was looking to get laid, he was in the right place. I soon found out that the bar fine was usually around $15, 500 to 600 baht. Following Gary's advice, I fell in love every day with Tip, Noi, Korn, Da, and a number of others whose names I can't remember. They were not like professional sex workers in the States. Most tried to provide a girlfriend experience for a price. Often money would not be mentioned until the next morning. How much I gave a lady was up to me. The usual rate for a long-time visit, one night, was about 2,000 baht, $50 to $60. At least, I got the pleasure of a beautiful, cooperative woman for a couple of hours or a night. I wondered how long I could live on a steady diet of make-believe bullshit. How many guys have spent big bucks at home trying to impress some self-absorbed, spoiled female with his ability to provide and ended up with a peck on the cheek? At least, the hookers I kept company with were honest about their intent. I found them charming, feminine, calculating, and predatory. Nevertheless, I drank too much, stayed up too late, and had too much loveless, meaningless sex. I felt lonely and empty without a woman to call my own. At least, I didn't waste any time thinking about the world I left behind. I woke up one morning with 2 women in my bed, and I had no idea who they were or how they got there. I realized that I needed more than an endless series of one-night stands. My behavior was out of character. I felt like a dog chasing my own tail. I was sexually drained, yet frustrated. It was the price for becoming a Bangkok warrior, as Gary had put it. Then, my world changed. Lamai came into my life. She was able to read the quiet desperation in my eyes. That ability to sense my need was to cost me dearly later. Lamai was a walking Asian sex machine. I first saw her on the SkyTrain. She was dressed in a business suit which was both very sexy and classy at the same time. She was tall for a Thai, and her skin was lighter due to her Chinese heritage. She was about 5 feet 9 inches in heels. Her short skirt emphasized her long legs. She moved with the grace of a leopard, and her face took my breath away. I couldn't help but smile like a smitten adolescent as my eyes locked onto her. I wanted to run my fingers through her raven black hair which flowed down her back. I was in love. She noticed my gaze and returned my smile. She looked to be an office worker of some kind. She had a class about her that separated her from the Ison peasant girls I had been sleeping with. I found out later that she an office temp. At least, that's what she said. I quickly introduced myself and was relieved that her English was pretty good. I asked if she could meet me somewhere for coffee, dinner, a walk in the park, anything. She said she could meet me at Starbucks on Succumbit Road at 6 p.m. We met and my life took a new turn. Time passed quickly. She was easy to get along with and curious about many things. I told her about my life back in the States and how I hoped to meet someone in Thailand to settle down with. Her eyes seemed to light up when I told her that. I wanted to believe the light in her eyes was showing genuine interest in me and not dollar signs. I like Farong Min. Thai man no good. He butterflies too much, cannot trust, she said, searching my face for a reaction. I need man who want to take care of me, and I take good care of him. I 28 now, getting old. I thought to myself, here we go, the same old bullshit. Old? This woman is a vision, a work of art, I thought to myself. In the States, she would stop traffic and cause old men to have heart attacks. She had no idea of how pretty she actually was. Where I came from, men would pay just to talk with her. In Thailand, she was one of many. She didn't look like she was old to me. Lamai was at that age when women begin to blossom to full womanhood. Her easygoing feminine ways felt like quicksand to me, as I was pulled in deeper and deeper. She told me she had to work 7 days a week sometimes and made only 10,000 baht a month, about $260. From that, she had to pay for rent, food, car fare, and send money to her family in the province. She was raised near the northern city of Chiang Rai. I didn't detect any self-pity, just acceptance of her fate. As she spoke, I couldn't help but feel the need to help her, to give her my protection. I hadn't felt like that in many years. She wasn't a bar girl. I felt safe with her. I decided to try to be Prince Charming. I know, big mistake. I choked back the nagging warnings that Gary had planted in my head, yet they were always there. I proceeded to explore the possibilities with caution. Do you have a boyfriend? No, no boyfriend. I was married before. He no good, drink too much and spend money at casino. He has a minor wife. She calls house sometimes, 'cause big trouble. Then, he beat me and tell me he leaving. I not see him again and cry a lot. I wanted to kick his butt for hurting her. She somehow brought out my protective instincts. I knew what Gary would say if I told him that was falling so hard for Lamai so soon. He would say, "Watch your back, son." She seemed different from the sharks I had been warned about and had associated with in the bars. I wanted to believe she really was different. I decided to proceed with caution. I think you kind and good man. I can read you. You need lady care for you. Many Thais ladies like you very much. I don't care about many Thais ladies. I want you to like me. Why? I think you are beautiful and a nice person too. I'm not so special. Many Thais ladies like me. Maybe, you know like me much when you know me better. I wondered if she was trying to tell me something. I didn't want to think about that. How did you learn English so well? I go to English school and pick up here and there. You think I talk good? Better than most? I was just curious. I knew that frequent contact with Farangs was how bar girls learned basic English. The first time we made love, I fell in love. Her body was firm and soft at the same time. Her skin, like fine Asian silk, was addictive. We started make slow, passionate love. That didn't last long. Soon, we were devouring each other. All of my pain, frustration, and loneliness came pouring out. I never wanted to let her go. Melting into one another, passion and lust overwhelmed me. I couldn't get enough of her. We made love until exhaustion overtook me. The next morning I woke up to her climbing onto my manhood. It was pure sex, just wild sensuality and pleasure. I loved it. Then, she gave me a massage that made me horny again. It scared me to feel that happy and young again. Despite my resolution to control myself, I was becoming more vulnerable by the minute. Weeks and months passed. Lamai was all I ever wanted or needed in a woman. It didn't take long before I wanted her to move in with me. When I mentioned it, she said, maybe soon, and changed the subject. Having all of the advantages and none of the disadvantages of a live-in girlfriend worked for me. There was no rush. I let it drop. Things were fine the way we were. I felt like a king. She was with me almost every evening. She washed my clothes, cooked for me, cleaned my condo, and gave me mind-blowing sex as often as could handle it. She never asked for money, and her favorite expression was, "Up to you." We went to many places together. Lamai was always close by, discreetly touching me in some way. I couldn't believe I was in a relationship that did not require constant compromise or argument. She never once flirted with another man. I enjoyed their envious looks when we were out together. Whenever I took her someplace or bought her a present, she always showed appreciation for my thoughtfulness. I couldn't believe my luck. We took care of each other. I needed to do something to fill my time while Lamai was at work. I found an orphanage not far from where I lived and began to teach English. The kids were fun, and I loved spending time with them. I don't know if I was any good at it, but the kids loved me, and they became important to my existence. I met some dedicated people at the orphanage. There was a young teacher there whose friendly help and pretty face caught my eye. Her name was Thung. I decided not to pursue her. She'd secretly would look at me with inviting eyes, but I was determined to be faithful to Lamai. Thung was the kind of woman that would fully expect the man she had sex with to marry her. She was the definition of a good girl. Temptation to stray was everywhere. In massage parlors, beer bars, and just strolling down the street. I had enough on my plate with Lamai. She didn't leave me with enough energy to deal with other women. When I wasn't teaching, I went to Thai language school. In time, my comprehension became pretty good. My ability to actually speak Thai progressed more slowly. Remembering what Gary had said, I kept my knowledge to myself. It was astounding to hear what Thais said in the presence of Farong. They have this ability to call a Farong the son of soy dog or water buffalo as they smiled in your face. The love for Farong was not nearly equal to their love of Farong money. For some reason, I didn't let Lamai know that I was studying Thai and could understand some of her phone conversations. I needed more time to completely trust her. Her mysterious nature was both exotic and somehow threatening. She often said that Farong who know too much no good. I wondered why she would think that. I knew that all women have their secrets, especially Thai women. I wanted access to those secrets before I could lower my guard. She tended to have trouble accounting for where she'd been and what she had been doing from time to time. I decided to sleep with one eye open, so to speak. I watched and waited for any red flags to appear, hoping none would. Anxiety churned inside me. I was not about to trade one bad domestic situation for another. Time would sort things out. After several months, the haze of lust and infatuation had cleared enough for me to start looking at Lamai objectively. She didn't like me asking too many questions about her life. Sometimes, my efforts led to some serious mood swings and tantrums which passed quickly. I tended to avoid confrontations. My world started to unravel when I decided to ask some hard questions after I concluded things were not quite right. Why have I not met your family, Lamai? They live far, far. Don't worry. We go someday soon. Where did you get the money to buy the gold jewelry you have on your salary? Your phone cost at least 6,000 baht. And where do you disappear to for hours sometimes at night? I call you, but your phone is turned off. What's going on? Why you question me? I love you. Why you make trouble? You not trust me? My questions made her angry and agitated. I didn't understand her reaction. I was sensing doom on the horizon. I know you love me, but please answer my questions. Make me feel better. I need to know. We need to be honest with each other. To me, honesty, trust, and loyalty are very important. I will not put up with lying or any break of my trust. You should know this. I want us to be open with each other. I ask for nothing that I am not willing to give you. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is important for our future that you do. Why Farang always talk of trust and honesty? These things not so important in Thailand. Peace and family, keeping face more important. Farang think too much. I wondered what the hell did that mean? I had the strong feeling that my words and attitude confused her. It was as if she could not comprehend what I was getting at. She could not understand why I was making her lose face through my questions and insistence on the truth, which was extremely important to me. Problems tended to happen whenever the conversation became intense. Our normal ability to communicate became difficult when she didn't want to answer a question or deal with something unpleasant. She would use anger or the pretense of language difficulties to change the subject. I wasn't going to let her get away with it this time. You know, love me. You want to keep me in cage. I need freedom. You not understand me. You only care yourself. She was raising her voice, about to go off. Freedom to do what? I pay the bills and take care of you. What the hell are you talking about? Are you cheating on me? Can I trust you? I wasn't going to take any crap or deception. No, no, no. I know cheat. You are man I love. Only you, sweetheart. I visit my friends sometime. Gold from old boyfriend. He from Sweden, gone back long time. You jealous? No good. Now, I sad. Arthur. You make Lamai very sad. She ran into the bathroom and slammed the door. I could see that the conversation was going nowhere. As usual, her answers didn't satisfy me. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was either lying or not telling me the whole truth. Before I could consider taking the relationship to the next level, I had to find some answers. Looking back, I was compelled to confirm what my gut was already knew. I needed confirmation. When she came out of the bathroom, she was crying. She ran to me and placed her tear-stained face on my chest. "I'm not mad now. I love you too much, sweetheart," she said, dropping to her knees. I was determined to get some answers. "Okay, I want to meet your friends. Could I do that?" She looked concerned for a minute, then she agreed. The next evening, I found myself in a restaurant filled with Thais. I was the only Farang there. Lamai had invited 5 of her friends to join us. 2 were male. I could understand a little of what was being said. I sat there spacing out, listening to the chatter until I heard one of the males, who she said was her cousin, say something to Lamai. "When are you going to make your Farang uncle buy house for you? I know like you sleeping with this ugly water buffalo. You can make him pay 500,000 or maybe 1 million baht sinsat. Then, we can be together. Remember, I am your husband. You stink with the smell of this Farang." My first thought was what? Water buffalo. To be called uncle and water buffalo was a major insult and signaled great disrespect. 1 million baht was close to $30,000. Did I hear what I think I heard? Sinsat is the Thai version of a bride price. In Thailand, the prospective groom was sometimes expected to pay this to show honor to the bride, and her family. Some families extorted this money from Farangs because they could. Sometimes, it was given back to the bride as a kind of marriage insurance. It is a practice that doesn't set too well with most Farangs. Thais expect Farangs to accept their culture and couldn't give a crap about theirs. Lamai and I had never seriously spoken of marriage or sinsat. She didn't seem upset by his insults. The scent of betrayal was strong in the air. What was this being together stuff? Husband? My throat tightened with rage, sadness, and pain. Resignation soon followed. I had to accept what I had just heard. I was beginning to feel like an old warrior myself. My world had crashed. Who was this woman? I decided to play the hand out. I wanted to see what would happen next. I controlled the anger building in my heart. I knew revenge was a risky thing in Thailand. There would surely be retaliation from her husband and friends. I needed a plan. However, I was not going to let her get away with her treachery. I thought, how could she do this to me? I wondered what I had done in a past life to deserve this treatment. I treated her like a princess. It appeared that the reason she never pressured me for money was that I was being set up for the big score. I braced myself for the end of my relationship. I tried to wall off my emotions for self-protection. The end was near. I would miss her. I hoped that in her own way, she really did care for me. Or did she? She surely didn't define love the way I did. When she used the word, it was hollow, having little or no meaning. I began to wonder if she even liked me. It was hard to believe anybody could be that good of an actress. When the dinner was over, her friends went their way. I heard the man who had been speaking to Lamai earlier say, "Soon you can come back to my bed and leave this stinking big Willy Farang. You should be with me, your husband. Pressure him. Tell him you must be married soon." He smiled at me as he spoke. It was everything I could do to keep from snapping his skinny neck and hers. Lamai laughed at his remarks. She took my arm lovingly as we walked back into the crowded Bangkok street. I had to be patient, but not too patient. I needed time to put my condo up for sale and arranged to move to the northern city of Chiang Mai. After I took my revenge for Lamai's betrayal, I would move far away. Lamai started throwing very strong hints that she wanted me to make an honest woman out of her. When she went to sleep, I searched her purse for the first time. I found 2 phones. One of them had names like Ryan, Nathan, Luke, and Vince stored in it. I resisted the urge to throw the phone out of the window. She had a date book with client names, dates, and hotels. I felt like such a sucker. The times indicated were all between 6 p.m. and 10 o'clock. After work, she was an escort. That's why she never needed to ask me for money. I had to give it to her. "She's good. Sweetheart, do you love me?" she asked in her most vulnerable voice. "Sure, I do. Why do you ask?" The game had begun. "I want us to marry. When I take you to family, I must say that we will marry." "Why?" "I lose big face and family if they know I sleep with you and not marry." I almost laughed in her face. She was using Thai logic on me. What she said was true, even more true when in the provinces. Too bad she was full of crap and already married. I might have been sympathetic. "I think you're right, Lamai. You are a loving, faithful companion. I should marry you. We should marry soon. I want you to be my wife. I will love you forever." "Oh, sweetheart. I'm so happy. I tell family and friends. I want marry in province, so village can come and see my handsome husband. My family will gain much face." She paused for a minute. "You know you give family sinsat. It is Thai tradition. Very important. I know about sinsat. How much?" "I think 1 million baht." She said it as a question. A million baht. I'm not rich, I said, playing her game. She thought another minute and said, okay, 500,000 would be okay. She looked at me with hopeful eyes. I think I can do that. It's a heavy price, but I want to make you happy. Tears slid down her face. If I didn't know better, I would have sworn her look portrayed genuine gratitude and love. She hugged me for a long time, not speaking. Her arms trembled. The heat of her hands penetrated my back. She was good. Sweetheart, I not deserve man like you. I must have been very good in past life. Our love very strong. I love you too much, she said as she seductively stripped for me. Testosterone surged through my veins. If I could not have her loyalty, I would take her body, probably for the last time. I felt like I was cursed to love unfaithful women. I am going to give you some money. I want you to go home and arrange an engagement party. Invite everyone in the village. Buy lots to eat and drink. Hire a band. You know what to do. Go tomorrow. I will join you in 3 days. I will bring sin sat and many baht of gold for all to see when I come to the party. Everyone will be jealous of you. They will know how much I treasure your love and devotion to me. Devotion? It means being true and loyal, I said, gritting my teeth. Then I took her, not caring about her pleasure, only mine. I did her with anger and lust. Then we rested exhausted in each other's arms, each lost in their own thoughts. She left the next day to set everything up. I rented out my condo and had my possessions shipped to Chiang Mai. On the day of the big party, I called Lamai. Many people will come. Everyone wants to see you and my sin sat. I want to see you, handsome man. Please hurry. I wait for you every minute. She was very excited. I will be there. Start the party. I will come soon. I love you, bye. I hung up the phone with sadness in my heart. I would never see her again. The loss of face she was about to suffer would be powerful revenge for her betrayal. On the day of the party, there were at least 200 people in attendance. People danced, ate, and drank with abandon. The messenger that I had hired entered the room and went directly to the microphone after whispering something in a band member's ear. He spoke in Thai. Attention, please. I have a message from the man Lamai is supposed to marry. The crowd hushed, a ripple of curiosity spreading through the room. He says he will not be coming tonight. He will not come because Lamai is a lying, cheating woman who doesn't love him. She's already married and planned to divorce her husband after receiving her sin sat and new house. He says his heart is broken and hopes she spends the rest of her life reflecting on what could have been, until she's old and gray. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Lamai, who stood frozen in shock, her face an unreadable mask before twisting into a mixture of rage, embarrassment, and disbelief. She trembled slightly as if every eye in the room burned into her. That damned Farang tricked me, she hissed to her husband, who sat nearby looking equal parts drunk and disappointed. Meanwhile, I was adjusting well to my new life. Chiang Mai's cooler weather and fresher air made it a welcome change from Bangkok. I found a small orphanage and began teaching English again, something that gave me purpose. If I ever craved female company, it wasn't hard to find. All it took was a stroll through certain parts of town to hear the familiar refrain. Hello, handsome man. Where are you from? You want take me hotel for Boom Boom? Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
My name is Grant Taylor. I was born in a medium-sized Midwestern city and grew up as an only child in a typical all-American family. This is my story. In high school, I was an athlete on the varsity team handball squad. It's not a widely popular sport across the country, but in my hometown, it had a dedicated following thanks to our coach, a passionate man from Eastern Europe who introduced it to our school. I was a decent athlete, tall and lean. But, honestly, I was drawn to team handball for one main reason. The girls. The girls' team practiced on the court right next to ours, and they were beautiful. I suspect our coach knew exactly what he was doing by scheduling practices side by side. It was a clever way to attract some of the school's best athletes to the team. Quite the honey trap, you could say. With that kind of motivation, I practiced hard and eventually became the top scorer on the team. A girl in my grade named Clara Bennett was on the girls' team. She was a beautiful, tall, blonde girl with stunning gray eyes. Clara and I became friends during our senior year of high school. Clara was excellent in math and I was good with computers, so we had some things in common besides team handball. She found me handsome and funny, and we became an item. We lost our virginity with each other the summer after graduating from high school. We were lovers all summer, but after some weeks Clara told me that because we would be going to college in different states it would be better for us to break up, rather than try to maintain a long-distance relationship. I was upset at the time, and we broke up then and there. I was single for the last month of summer. It was after my breakup with Clara that my neighbor, Evan Delgado, hired me to help him build a swimming pool in his backyard. He offered me some cash and the free use of his swimming pool after we completed it. I needed some money to get my old car fixed, so it worked out perfectly. Evan took a couple of weeks off work, and I helped him build the pool. His wife, Diane, would always bring us something to drink while we worked and would prepare lunch for us. I would always ask for low-fat milk rather than soft drinks or beer. The first time I requested this, she looked at me a little funny, but brought me milk. We finished the pool in less than 2 weeks, and Evan paid me more than promised. After we were done, he went back to work. I found myself at his swimming pool a lot for the rest of the summer. Evan and Diane had 2 younger sons, aged 6 and 8. I liked the 2 boys and I played a lot with them out at the pool. Diane liked that I entertained her sons. I used the swimming pool nearly every day in August, and I began to notice Diane frequently looking at me with some interest. I have to admit that I looked at her with some interest too. She was a stunning 29-year-old woman with a captivating figure and long, graceful legs. I especially liked when she was in her bikini and would hang out in the pool with us. She was originally from Eastern Europe, and her mesmerizing accent always had a way of making my heart race. One day, I was at the pool and was getting ready to leave. The boys were in their rooms playing video games. I mentioned to Diane that I had to get some stuff for my college dorm. She told me that she knew of all kinds of sales and would help me with my shopping. She told me to go with her the next day, that her sons would be busy with sports, so we could have the whole day to spend together. She walked up to me confidently, gently placing her hand on my chest and tracing a finger down my face. Leaning in close, she whispered softly in my ear, "You know, Grant, in my home country, there's an expression. It translates to, different gyms train the body better." Surprised, I stumbled over my words and managed to ask, "What does that mean?" "It means, Grant," she said as she slowly pulled away to look me in the eyes with a look that said I was a piece of meat and she was a starving dog, that a different lover would be most exciting for me. I was frozen in place. "I'll see you tomorrow, Grant," she said with a twinkle in her eye. I stumbled home in a lustful daze. I told my dad that I want to go with Diane to shop for college supplies. My dad's brain worked quickly and got the whole story from me with a little prompting. He told me to consider that if I had an affair with Diane, she could lose her husband. He asked me if Evan divorced Diane, would I leave college and marry Diane and raise her children? I told him that I didn't love her and didn't want to marry her. He told me to consider that while Evan was a nice guy, he was also a big, strong man and would not stand for me sleeping with his wife. He told me to consider that Evan was a man and would likely beat me if he found out that I had screwed his wife. He told me that while he and Mom would visit me in the hospital if I survived, but they wouldn't feel too badly for what would happen to me if Evan got a hold of me. That gave me another pause for thought. He also informed me that if Evan beat the hell out of me, he would go to prison. If that happened, would I leave college and would I help Diane and her children? By the end of our talk, I felt embarrassed. My dad persuaded me and I canceled this adventure with Diane. I guess I had never thought of adultery before my talk with my dad, but he gave me a lot to think about. I realized that adultery was not something to condone or engage in. Everybody loses. Needless to say, I didn't go over to Evan and Diane's pool anymore after that, and I did not speak to Diane for a long time. I went to college and I lived the usual student life. I dated several girls and even slept with a few, but I did not find the one. I was not too wild, but I partied some and drank my share of beers. Interestingly, except for at parties, milk remained my drink of choice. After graduation, I came home. I got a job at a medium-sized firm, working in the IT department. Not long after I started, I happened to run into Clara. She told me she had been hired to teach math at a local high school. She was single, I was single, so we began to date. Soon, we were in love. A few months into our renewed relationship, she became pregnant. I asked her to be my wife. I was going to anyway, honest, and she accepted my proposal. We were married shortly thereafter and settled into a happy married life. Our son was born 4 months after our marriage. Our daughter was born 2 years later. Clara stayed at home with our children. We planned for her to do that until they were both of school age, at least. Our sex life was probably similar to that of most young married couples with small children, 3 to 4 times weekly, down from our bunny-like habits before our son was born. My mom's parents had died and left me with a little money. I was their only grandchild, which I used for a down payment on a nice suburban house. That windfall, plus my pretty good salary, allowed us to live comfortably with just me working. However, we didn't do too many extravagant things. Our typical recreation and holidays were spent with my family or Clara's family. My dad's parents lived in an old farmhouse on a lake about 50 miles from us, and we would visit them a lot. They had a big, empty house and loved to have us visit. We would fish, play in the water, and just have a great time as a family. My granddad was a hunter and I went with him to hunt frequently. We brought home the game and my grandma and my wife cooked them. My dad was always more of a fisherman, so hunting was a thing my granddad and I shared together, just the two of us. My dad had the habit of taking my son out fishing, so maybe that would be a special granddad and grandson tradition for the two of them someday. My granddad liked hunting with shotgun for birds. Once he told me on a hunting trip that he had once put the fear of God into a guy who was making unwanted advances on grandma by changing the buckshot from a shell and replacing it with fine salt. Apparently, hitting a guy with that would give a good dose of pain for days. Plus, it would scare the shit out of whoever was on the receiving end. He died when the kids were still small, and Grandma moved to our city. We kept the old farmhouse, and my father kept the weapons and the cartridges. My wife was adamant about not wanting them in our house with the kids and all. Sometimes all the logic in the world cannot sway a woman's opinion, so it's just not worth the fight. When I wanted to go up hunting to my grandparents' property, I would just stop over at my parents' house and grab the guns. During the summers, we often would go to my parents' or Clara's parents' house for the day. Frequently when we did, we would go over to Evan and Diane's pool. They liked our children same as I had liked their children earlier. It had been some years since Diane's indecent proposal to me, so there was no weirdness between us. In fact, she seemed like the model wife and mother. I chalked her behavior with me up as a one-time thing. In fact, Diane became like a true aunt for our children. I had been working at my employers for a little over 8 years, having been promoted to project leader, when my boss got permission from the CEO and the owners to build a central IT system. Long story short, the opportunity was great for our company, and my career in particular. It involved many months of long hours. I worked late most evenings for the better part of the year, but thankfully we only worked 1 or 2 weekends a month. It was a stress on my relationship with my wife and kids, but I was doing it for my family. 6 or 7 months into the project, I was sent out of town for 2 weeks to work with another division. While there, I worked closely with another department head, and Doherty. She was an impressive 30-something brunette with a sharp mind and a strong presence. She was married and she had a son and a daughter, like me. I was acquainted with her from my early days with my employer, when she worked at the same office. We had always gotten on well back then, and it was nice to see her again. We worked with each other closely for most of those 2 weeks, and we just clicked. There was a definite chemistry there. I worked with her, or her colleagues, all day into the evening, and joined me for dinner and drinks several times, catching up with each other, discussing old acquaintances, and just keeping each other company. It appears she had been very busy for the last few months as well, and knew that she would be putting in long hours while I was in town with my team. She explained that her husband was gone for a week with their kids, visiting his parents out of town while she was busy with the project. I couldn't help but notice that and got increasingly flirtatious with me as the weeks went on. I also noticed that she wore sexy perfume and had a habit of unbuttoning her blouse and leaning into me at every opportunity. I had been out of the game for a while, but I knew the signals and wanted me. No doubt about it, I was tempted, especially given that my sexual needs had suffered for the last few months, and the wife was a couple of states away, and I were the last two working on the Friday before my departure on Saturday. She insisted we go out, just the two of us, for one last night of dinner. When I met her at the hotel bar, my jaw dropped. She was dressed to the nines. Tiny little black dress with a deep V-neck showing all kinds of firm, ripe cleavage. Her sky-high heels showed her legs to the best possible advantage. Her skirt knee-length with a slit that showed her entire left leg when she took a stride. I ordered her a drink and asked her where she wanted to go for dinner. She told me with quiet, seductive voice, "How about we go to your room and order in?" I stammered something completely unintelligible, and she continued, "Don't be shy, Grant. We've been building to this for 2 weeks, and you know it. Tonight's the night. My husband is out of town. Your wife is a million miles away, and it's just you and me. Just tonight. Just this once." I looked at her in awe. I had never been too tempted in my life. If I am being honest, I was probably never so turned on. It was as if a pheromone cloud enveloped me. I felt dizzy. I knew, somewhere deep inside, that this would happen that night. But nothing prepared me for the reality of the seduction. I gazed at her, those eyes, those lips, and then she kissed me, a soul-searing kiss, and I kissed her back. God help me, but I wanted her as much as I've ever wanted a woman in my entire life. And we were alone in a sea of nothingness. I drove home from the airport in autopilot mode. I had survived the test. Before my will had been broken, the kiss was. and I had pulled away. Deep inside, I found the strength to resist and reject what every fiber of my body was desperate to take. I felt amazement that I had come so close to the precipice, but a certain pride in not falling into the abyss. I felt as if I had awoken from a comatose state and had sparked a level of attraction in me that I had never felt before, and hadn't taken it very well, calling me a pathetic loser or something like that. But I just smiled, nodded, wished her a good night, and returned to my room, alone. When I returned home to my family, I couldn't hug and kiss them enough. I think I took them all by surprise at my reaction, but I was honestly the happiest I had been in the longest time. I had long, passionate, tender sex with Clara Saturday and Sunday nights when the children slept. She was pleased with me, and we renewed our vows of love for each other that weekend. I resolved to take more care to prioritize my wife and children, even if I had to work mad hours. I returned to work on Monday, made my reports to the bosses for my 2 weeks away, caught up on my correspondence, and left at a reasonable hour for the first time in months. Clara was again surprised by my early arrival. I joined her at our son's handball game, seeing him for the first time that season, chatting with other parents, and having a good time with my family. We went out for pizza afterwards. That night, I made love to my wife for the third night in a row. For the first time in over a year, I am sure. "Wow," she said, wiping the sweat from her brow after our second round of lovemaking. "If I didn't miss you so much when you were gone, I would suggest that you go away for 2 weeks more often. I just realized how important you are to me," I said, "and I wanted to show you just how much I love you. And I'm sorry if I haven't been showing you that enough these last months. Baby, I know you're doing this for us, but it means a lot when you show me how much you care like this. Now, let me show you just how much I love you," she said as she moved closer, holding me in a warm embrace. A third round of passionate sex followed, another first in a long time for us, and called me several days later. She was coy and non-committal, but I got the sense that she wanted to see if I was having any second thoughts about not taking her up on her offer. I told her politely but firmly that I didn't regret my decision to turn her down, and that I would not cheat on my wife. She apologized for her forward behavior. I told her not to worry about it, and I assured her that I would be discreet. She expressed gratitude for that, and then sounded embarrassed by the whole episode. I told her she would have seduced me if I had been a bachelor, that it was a compliment her that I had had such a hard time refusing her advances. She cried a little and told me that her husband neglected her, and that she had strong suspicions that he might have a mistress. She told me that she had not cheated on him before, but that she liked me, was attracted to me, and thought I was the perfect person with whom to seek a little attention, affection, and reinforcement of her own attractiveness. I told her that I appreciated that. I told her that I didn't want to get mixed up in her relationship, but I wished her well. A few months later, I was again sent to Anne's outstate office for a week of meeting. Again, I worked long days and evenings with Anna and her team during the testing period. Anna was very proper to me, but I did notice that she seemed to have a very close connection with a young male colleague of hers, Jeff something. One evening at the office, I went to the restroom in the nearly empty building. When I returned, I saw Jeff talking closely to Anna, his hand on her back as he whispered something to her. Anna noticed me standing in the doorway and gently pulled away from him, shrugging it off. She had the good grace to look a little embarrassed, and I had the good grace to remain silent about them. I was pleased Anna was not my wife. A couple months later, our big project was wrapping up successfully, and I had a promotion and raise coming. That made me happy, but I was happier that I would be able to get back to a more normal schedule. The boss sent me and a couple of members of my team to a week-long IT training seminar in Jacksonville, Florida. I've never, before or since, seen so many attractive women with such huge tits per capita in all my life as I did in Northeast Florida. Amazing, really. I met with many people from different companies. One night, I was in the bar of the hotel, where the seminar was held. I was the youngest one at the table, only 29 years old. When I revealed that, one of the guys at the table asked if the first round of divorces was hitting my friends yet. I asked him what he meant. He informed me that, these days, everyone gets married in their young to mid-20s, and the divorces started in the late 20s and early 30s. The others at the table nodded and snickered. One of the guys at the table, an elder fellow in his mid-50s, told us he had been married twice and he was successful in his second divorce. I asked him what he meant. He said that he was burned by his first divorce, so prepared for the second one just in case. He told us that he hid a little money from his second wife very carefully, so as not to be discovered in the event of divorce. I questioned his honesty, and he informed me that his second wife wasn't too honest when he caught her cheating on him with the pool boy. In any event, his thinking was that, if the marriage had been successful, He would have had a secret reserve for emergency and extra money for the grandchildren. But since his wife was a cheating 304, instead he managed to have a secret restart fund after the smoke had cleared after his divorce. He apparently had managed to squirrel away well in excess of $100,000 that his wife never discovered. He had a head start on restarting his life after his second divorce. Good for him. Everyone else at the table seemed to have a divorce nightmare story, or had several friends who had been through the ringer. It was an eye-opener for me. While I loved and trusted my wife, I started to think that this secret fund idea was a pretty smart move. If nothing else, it could be a nice little secret college fund for the kids, or a nice retirement fund to surprise my wife with 30 or 35 years down the road. From that day on, I started a secret fund, depositing small cash withdrawals every week and requesting any and all bonuses to be issued separately into separate retirement accounts. All in all, it equaled maybe 5% of my gross earnings. Enough to matter, not enough to be too noticeable. Life went on. The kids grew, Clara and I prospered, and I was a happy man. 3 years later at a company event I ran into, and again, she told me that Jeff, the single colleague, had been her lover those few years ago, but that he had left for California and she had not any lover since then. Her marriage is good now, and her husband Jim, and she rebuilt their marriage for their children. We were alone at the table, and the loud music allowed us to talk with some privacy. So I was a little cheeky and asked her about how it all came about, and her honesty took me by surprise. How did you reconcile with your husband? This is interesting, because I caught him cheating. Jim has a construction firm, and one of his woman colleagues was his mistress. I confronted him with my knowledge and demanded that he stop. Of course, I didn't bother to tell him I had cheated on him, too. So you were the engine for the reconciliation, were you? Yes, I suppose I was. After I confronted him, he broke it off with her, and he asked me to forgive him. I told him I would try, but that we needed to go to marriage counseling. This was my best idea. But you were never honest with him? True. But he was a worse cheater than me. We worked with the counselor for a few months, couples counseling and individual sessions, too. We addressed our underlying problems, which were more serious than the cheating itself. So, no, I didn't ever fess up completely, but I didn't see a reason for it. And I didn't beat him up about his cheating too much, either. I just wanted to fix us at that point. I guess sinners can forgive each other easier. I observed, and looked at me speculatively, then said, exactly. The counselor was smart, and he guessed that I had cheated, too. We talked about it during my individual sessions, but he kept my secret from Jim. He agreed that my cheating was about self-image and acceptance, maybe even revenge, but my infidelity wasn't the problem with our relationship. Lack of care and attention and intimacy with each other was the problem. Besides communication and prioritizing our time together, he also recommended an interesting sex practice, which helped to save our marriage. Really? That is interesting, I prompted. You see, this is kind of embarrassing to talk about, but I trust you. Part of our reestablishing our intimacy and emotional connection involved a very primal physical connection. What could be more primal than sex between a man and a woman? I asked, and said, a little red-faced, well, the marriage counselor recommended more sex for us. I was glad that Ann and Jim had reconciled. I was not sure I ever could in either of their shoes, but to each their own. If they were happier now, then I was happy for them. It wasn't until our daughter Sophie was 10 years old and my son Keith was 12 that Clara finally went back to teaching math in a high school. She took a couple of refresher courses that summer, but was able to pretty much jump right back in. She was really gifted when it came to math. Our kids took after her in that way. In fact, they were both excellent students. Like Clara and I, they were also tall and good athletes. They, too, became team handball players. I was very proud of my kids. Clara really threw herself into her work. I suppose with the kids getting older and needing her less, she was looking for another outlet. In addition to teaching high school math, she volunteered to be the coach of the school's math team. As such, she met with and trained several skilled students weekly twice extra 2 hours of teaching after school. She received a small stipend for her work, but it wasn't about the money. She trained them for student math competitions. Under her tutelage, the team did extracurricular well. As a team, they placed third in state the first year. The next year, they placed second and qualified for the national competition. She traveled with the students to Pennsylvania for the competition. One of her students, a shy gangly kid named Rob, was among the best 10 mathematics students in the national competition, and he ultimately got full academic scholarship to Caltech. Clara was particularly proud of him, as he was talented, but never really gave math his full effort until she chose him for the math team. For the 2 years he was on the team, she put in extra time and effort with him. Their hard work and dedication paid off. I was proud of Clara's accomplishments. Life was good. By this time, I was 37 years old. I was successful and happy in my work and family. I still went out and hunted from time to time, and we still went out to my grandparents' property as a family to fish and play in the water. We still visited our parents frequently and still spent time in Evan and Diane's pool. Life was good. Sure, my sex life with Clara had slowed down some. We weren't kids in our 20s any longer, but we still had a pretty good, if rather familiar, love life. I still loved her with all my heart, and we still had fun together when we could find the time. Her returning to work decreased our time together. She was often busy with the math team, or with grading homework, quizzes, and tests. No multiple choice questions in her classes. She was a show-you-work kind of teacher. But I couldn't begrudge her teaching career. It clearly gave her a great deal of satisfaction. In any event, my responsibilities had increased at work as well, and I was putting in plenty of hours of my own. Still, I did find myself with more alone time than I had been used to, with the kids busy with their own activities. They were 15 and 13, respectively, and Clara busy with her work. I've always been a fan of fiction, and I started exploring various online story websites. While I enjoyed science fiction and adventure short stories, I also came across some adult-themed sites. I became particularly interested in stories about infidelity, not the explicit fantasy ones, but the dramatic narratives about cheating spouses. To be honest, it became a bit of an obsession. Every day, I'd browse through new submissions, seeking tales of love, betrayal, and loss. I found myself captivated by the stories of revenge against unfaithful partners, and I couldn't help but root for the betrayed spouses as they rebuilt their lives. Although my own marriage was strong, I'd seen enough of my friends experience the turmoil of divorce to understand their pain. I have to admit that reading these stories got to me. I suppose reading too much of that stuff will put crazy ideas in your head. It did to me anyway. Although I trusted my wife, I did get niggling suspicions. Telling myself I was doing it as a lark, I even secretly checked the DNA of my children. They were mine. All right. Still, my suspicions did not totally subside. I read more and I began to think about bugs and web cameras for secret surveillance. I bought these instruments from my secret accounts. Yes, I was still maintaining those. And these electric gadgets I connected to a dedicated personal server at my office. Schools were out for summer. Keith and Sophie went away to summer camps at the same time. Clara was at home almost all day. I assembled the bugs and the web cameras in our house and activated the recordings. I checked the activity for a few days, discovering nothing out of the ordinary, and I began to feel like a creep. Why was I doing this? Why was I invading my wife's privacy? Because of paranoia from reading a bunch of silly stories? I stopped my madness and forgot about the surveillance. It was about this time that a pretty big project landed on my desk. I was really busy for a couple of weeks. After we finally finished the project, I was back in my office, pushing papers and screwing around with my electronic files. I was reminded of my surveillance project. I intended to dismantle the entire insane operation, but decided to give a few of the files a quick look for the hell of it. I looked at them, and I almost fell off my chair in surprise. It was literally the first tape I watched. My loving wife had a lover, the recent high school graduate math team star and soon-to-be Caltech scholarship student. The little a-hole apparently lost his virginity to my cheating wife. It was a whole seduction routine, with my wife as his sex teacher. It was not lost on me that this was a lot like the Diane episode from my own younger days, except this a-hole actually screwed my wife. I reviewed a couple more surveillance videos. Sure enough, they had sex multiple times in my house while my kids were away at camp. I didn't bother listening to everything, but it seemed clear that my wife had taken quite an interest as little Rob, and not just in his brain. It appeared that my wife was taking her tutoring to the next level. It was clear that she intended to be done with him after their 2-week-long tryst, but it was no mistake. I was enraged. My first idea was to kill them, but let myself calm a little and realized that I didn't want to land in prison. Plus, I wasn't a murderer, and I couldn't do that to my kids. My next idea was to figure out a way to set up my wife and send her to prison for a few years, maybe one in Southeast Asia. Clearly, I had to give this whole situation some thought. I instructed my secretary to hold all my calls, cancel all my appointments for the day, and allow no one to disturb me. I closed the door and I examined the voice files carefully. If the cheating affair started while Rob Boy was still in high school, I could get my wife fired, maybe even arrested. But it appeared that their brief affair only commenced during that 2-week period after his graduation. So, maybe no criminal charges and no guaranteed firing, but I could be a vindictive a-hole and present my wife as a cheating 304 teacher to our community. Best case scenario, public humiliation for her, and maybe she would lose her job and teaching license. But I didn't want to humiliate my kids. They didn't deserve to be collateral damage in all of this. Same with her parents. They had always been good to me. I listened to the last few recordings more carefully. They were planning a last meeting. A meeting for tomorrow. Damn them. Thoughts of mayhem again entered my imagination. I calmed myself with the greatest exertion of willpower. Even though I didn't want to go public with the videos of my wife's affair, I considered that she wouldn't know that. Therefore, I could possibly blackmail my soon-to-be ex-wife and obtain the best divorce terms possibly. That would give me some satisfaction and justice. But Rob needed to be taught a lesson, as well. I recalled my granddad's solution to a predator all those years ago. I took the rest of the day off and contacted a top divorce lawyer. I got an appointment for the next day and took the next 2 days off work. I went to my parents and I told them what I had found out. A little while later, my father found me down in the basement with granddad's old shotguns. He expressed alarm, but I explained my intended revenge. In the end, he helped to change the lead buckshot to fine salt crystal and some cartridges. I also took along one of my granddad's old pistols. I called my cheating wife and told her that I had to go out of town that night for a work emergency and that I would be back in 2 days. She seemed pleased enough with my plans. The bitch. That night, I considered my options in a calmer state of mind. Could I reconcile with my wife? Should I try? It seemed like it was a one-time, short affair. She didn't love the kid, but they were clearly close. Still, it wasn't like she wanted to run away with him. And I watched the tapes. He wasn't anything special in bed. In fact, he screwed like one would expect from an 18-year-old virgin. Sloppy, quick, and overeager. My wife spent time with him occasionally, but it always seemed like an extension of the mentoring she had been doing for him, helping him in ways that were both personal and professional. No excuse, but it didn't seem to be about love or a desire for sexual satisfaction that she was missing with me. Thing was, this was no one-time slip. It was premeditated. It was intentional. It was a sign of her disrespect for me and our marriage. I couldn't live with that. I couldn't remain married to this woman. This woman that I had loved for so long. She just screwed everything up. Maybe I wasn't as good a person as Anne. I just couldn't forgive and forget. Ever. I had to move on, and I had to have my revenge. Since killing a cheating wife and her lover wasn't considered socially acceptable, I would have to get my pound of flesh in some other way. These thoughts swirled in my head until I finally fell asleep. My children are so old they could come to me freely, and I could meet them a lot. The next day I went to the lawyer and we discussed about my possibilities. Since we had no prenuptial agreement, all marital assets would be divided in 50 to 50%. Since my inheritance paid for our down payment, I would most likely be entitled to a greater share of the proceeds from the sale of the house. He told me that the children were old enough so that their wishes would be factored into the physical custody arrangement, but that their mother had been the primary caretaker for most of their lives, so she was more likely to get primary physical custody. He told me that there was a chance of 50 to 50 physical custody as well, but only if the parties agreed. The lawyer told me that the house would remain intact until the youngest child became 18 years old, and we could sell it and share 50 to 50%, less my down payment. Although she had a full-time teaching job, I made significantly more money than Clara, and I had a lot more in my retirement accounts than she had. My lawyer told me I would likely have to pay her alimony for some time, and child support as well, unless I had primary physical custody. I told him that I wanted divorce, and that I would get her to agree to my terms. He said that all documents would be ready in a week. I thought my children would come home before this. I went to the banks and organized our bank interest for the divorce proceedings. I checked the time. It was time for my early return. I parked my car down the block from our house and took my bag of weapons and walked to my home. I entered the house silently through the back door. The coast was clear. I crept upstairs to the master bedroom. I burst into the bedroom and I shot the cheaters who were going at it. I shot both salt cartridges into them. They literally flew off the bed, howling in pain and fear. I admired my handiwork for a few moments. When the two cheaters realized that they were not seriously wounded, though in great pain, I threw the empty shotgun to the floor and cleared my throat. They froze, staring at me with grimaces of pain etched on their faces. I stared at them with a look of contempt on my face. I slowly, deliberately took the pistol out of my jacket pocket. Then, I let a look of rage break out over my face. "I'll kill you," I shouted. The young lover boy and my cheating wife screamed in fear. My wife and Rob pissed themselves from fear of death. I aimed the pistol at young Rob. My cheating wife moaned with voice filled with pain. "Don't kill him." Ignoring her pleas, I moved to him deliberately. He closed his eyes and cowered. I kicked the balls and body of the wallowing a-hole. My rage was not feigned. It felt good. Seeing him rolling on the floor in agony, tears on his face, with a butt cheek full of fine salt buckshot, satisfied my sense of vengeance. I regained my composure again. I have given up on this marriage, but I wanted to leave a little reminder for the two cheaters. I waited for him to recover a bit. Clara was on the floor, clutching a bed sheet to her chest, a look of fear and confusion written all over her face. She remained silent. Once he was back to breathing steadily, I again lowered the pistol to his head and said, "You little a-hole. You will learn to stay away from my wife." Rob moaned from pain and pleaded for his life. "Don't kill me." "Why not? It's that or you give up Caltech. If I let you live, are you willing to give up college and take care of my wife when I divorce the bitch?" The moaning young lover boy wanted to play the knight with shining armor. "Yes, I'll give that up. I'll support her." I shook my head with pity. "Then you are totally stupid. You are a stupid boy if you would give up your academic future for a 304 almost 20 years older than you." I paused. "I'm not going to kill you, moron. I'm not going to kill either of you. She's a 304 and you're a stupid kid. Neither of you are worth it," I sighed. The air was full of relief, because they understood I would not kill them, but they weltered in their own piss from their pain and, I would hope, their shame. I turned back to Rob and told him with a cold voice, "But if I will see you near to my wife again, I will kill you. Do you understand me?" "Yes, I do." My cheating wife moaned from the pain in the background and she cried. I continued, "Listen, Rob, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to say anything to anyone about what happened here today. Got it? You will get out of town for good by the end of the week. I don't care where you go, but you will go, and you will stay gone, for the rest of the summer. Maybe you head out to California early, to check out the campus. I don't care, but you leave town. If I see you around after the end of the week, you're a dead man. Do you understand me?" Rob looked at me, and I knew he believed every word I said. "Yes, I do." I thought about the fact that I did not want to pay my wife alimony or excessive child support, so I decided one more instruction was necessary to protect her job. "One last thing, lover boy. I don't want you saying a word to anyone about your sordid little affair with my wife. If I find out you told even one person what you and she did, or about this morning, I'll put a bullet in your brain. Do you understand?" "I understand. I haven't said anything about this to anyone, and I never will. I promise." I stared at him long and hard. Finally, I replaced the pistol into my pocket and said, "I believe you, Rob. That's the only reason you're still alive. That, and it's obvious to me that you're just a weak, stupid kid. Don't make me regret this, Mercy." He shook his head frantically. "Your butt is gonna be sore as hell for a few days, but there's no real harm done. I shot you with salt. When you get home, take a shower and wash it gently. Maybe put on a dressing. You don't need to go to the doctor or anything. The scabbing should be gone in a week or two. If anyone asks, you fell off your bicycle. Got it? Good. Now, get dressed and get out." The young a-hole got dressed and left the house. I closed the door after him. I went back to the bedroom, where my wife was still cowering with tears on her face. I said, "Go take a shower." She went to the bathroom moaning and crying. I went to the kitchen and poured a full glass of cold milk. I always preferred milk. It had a calming effect on me. I chuckled wryly a little and I drank it. My wife finished her shower. I could hear her in the bedroom crying. She started when I spoke to her. "Get dressed and wait for me here. I'll be back within an hour. We've got some talking to do." "Grant, Just shut up, Clara. We can talk when I get back. Just wait here for me." I threw the bag with the shotgun and pistol into my car and drove them back to my parents' house. My dad met me there. He looked at me with a question in his eye. "Yeah, it went like we planned. She was there with him, humping away like a couple of rabbits. Just dump the guns, Dad. I don't think either is going to squeal, but it would be best if the guns disappeared." He nodded, and I returned home. There were no police, and that was a good sign. My wife was in the bedroom cleaning the mess from the carpet. I gazed at her. At 36, she was still a beautiful woman. I sighed, and she turned, a look of profound sadness on her face. I felt drained. Much of my hate and rage had been dissipated by my earlier encounter. "Putting a couple of shells worth of salt into a pair of cheating a-holes will do that for you, Grant? I'm sorry. I really am. I won't lie to you. This wasn't our only time, but it was going to be our last time. Just stop, Clara," I said wearily. "Please, Grant. Just let me tell you, I've never done anything like this before. I didn't plan it. Well, I didn't go looking for it, at least. I don't love him. He was so special to me, and we got so close, and look, there's no excuse, but no, there's no excuse, Clara. But there are consequences. Please, Grant. I know I did wrong, but I wasn't thinking straight. He had such a crush on me, it felt good to my ego. I thought I was giving him a gift. He was a virgin and You decided to be his teacher in the bedroom, too. I get it, Clara. You wanted a little change, and this kid was your opportunity. No, Grant. It wasn't like that. It wasn't that I wanted something you weren't giving me. He wasn't anywhere near as good in bed as you. He's just a kid. For God's sake. Yes, he is. About that, how stupid are you, Clara? You don't think a kid is going to talk to his friends about nailing his hot math teacher? And you are hot, Clara. You don't think this sort of thing is going to get around? Even if it never gets past the rumor stage, you don't think word of this is going to slip out? Didn't you think how this sort of thing could hurt you, your career, your marriage, our kids for Christ's sake? Rob wouldn't tell anyone. Bullshit, Clara. The little a-hole would have let it slip out. Maybe not today, maybe not this summer. But at some point, when he was back in town over Thanksgiving break maybe, he would be hanging out with his friends, having had a few too many beers, and he would have said something. Just let a few details slip. And that's all it takes, Clara. Well, that, and you whoring around on me in the first place. Please, Grant, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I don't blame you, but please. You have to see that I love you very much. This was just a situation that got out of hand. It was an ego trip disguised as good intentions. I promise you, I have never done it before, and I would never do it again. Well, I'm certainly glad you weren't planning on making your glory hole an annual award for your best math student. Look, Clara, you haven't asked me yet, but I know what's been going on. I'm moving into the guest room for a while. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet, but I want you to just give me some space and leave me alone till I figure it out. Got it? Yes, Grant. I understand. The kids came home a couple of days later. Clara and I tried to act normally around them. The kids were excited to tell us about their time at camp, then became so busy with their friends and other activities that I don't think they noticed anything unusual between Clara and I. I could see that Clara was putting on a brave front, though she was a nervous wreck. To her credit, she left me alone for several days. I took mercy on her. Clara, could we talk? I asked her one night, after the kids had gone to bed. Yes, of course, Grant. Her eyes held a look of apprehension. I've decided that we need to divorce. Oh, no, she wailed, but quietly, so as not to disturb the children. I was impressed by her self-control. Yes, Clara. I was going to have you served with divorce papers tomorrow. Well, I still am, but I didn't want it to come as a complete shock. I wouldn't say I owe you this, after what you did, but I wanted to tell you face to face. Clara understood, but she asked the mandatory question in such situations, please, Grant, isn't there any hope for reconciliation? I love you. I screwed up. I don't understand it myself, exactly. Rob was never a threat to us. Oh God. Please, Grant. Please. She pleaded with tears streaming down her face. No, Clara, there is not. This was not a one-time drunken sex. That I could forgive. No, what you did was to premeditatively decide to become the sex teacher to a virgin young a-hole for weeks. I don't know why exactly, and I don't care. You did it intentionally. The woman I married would not have done that, would not have risked our marriage and our family to satisfy some curiosity, or to take pity, or to satisfy her ego, or whatever. No, you changed, Clara, and now I've changed. You broke your vows, and now I am free of this marriage. And I don't believe in open marriages, Clara. It might work for some, but it would never work for me. To get the freedom from this marriage that I need, I have to divorce you. My mind is made up. And then the sobbing came. She was disconsolate, racked with sobs, choking on her own pain. I felt some compassion for her, but I had given this thought. I was unmoved in my resolve, but I was, almost despite myself, moved by her pain. At last, she regained some of her composure. To her credit, she didn't drag out her pleas. I couldn't tell if she had truly accepted my decision. I wasn't sure how she would respond once the wheels were in motion, but at least she was rational again. I understand, Grant. You are going to divorce me, and our marriage is over. What's going to happen? You'll be served tomorrow with the papers. As angry as I am, as angry as I was, I don't hate you so much anymore, and I don't want to destroy you totally. We still have our children. We will have their interests to bind us together in their future. Yes, we will still have them. Won't we, Grant? She managed a small, sad smile, and risked a hopeful gaze into my eyes. I'm not sure what she was looking for, but she didn't find it. The smile disappeared and she looked down at her hands again. You should look for a lawyer, Clara, and have him review my divorce petition. But I recommend you accept the divorce conditions. They're fair, and I don't want to fight about them. I've suggested 50-50 legal custody of our children with you as primary physical custodian here at this house, with me getting unlimited visitation and physical custody every other weekend, and for me to get them for a month in the summer. You work less than I do, and you've always been a good mother to them, so it's only right that they stay here with you. I've provided for you to get the standard child support based on our incomes, but there will be no alimony. You get half our liquid assets, and I get half. I keep my retirement accounts, and you keep yours and your pension. And once the kids are grown, we will sell the house and split the proceeds 50-50, but I get back the down payment, plus interest. I understood. I will accept those divorce conditions. Will you tell our children why we have divorced? I won't tell them until Sophie graduates from high school, if ever. And I won't show them the video of you and Rob. I promise you that much. You have a video? Yep. And voice recordings, too. I have all the evidence I need to burn you down to the ground. A look of fear crossed her face, then. Don't worry, Clara. I was prepared to use them if I needed to, as leverage. But you've been cooperative. Stay cooperative, and I promise they will never see the light of day. Tomorrow, we can tell the kids that we're getting a divorce. I'll be moving in with my parents the next day. She made one last attempt. Grant, it will be difficult to live without you. You have been my only love. Please? Her voice was weak and soft, like a child's whisper. I steeled myself. I am sorry, Clara. After I move out, if you need something with the house or with the kids, well, you have my number. But as for anything else, my mind is made up. That's the way it is. Clara began crying again. I was difficult telling the kids that we were going to divorce. We didn't say anything about Clara's romps with Rob, and the kids were mystified. They cried, and we promised them that it wasn't their fault, but that there was no chance of us getting back together. I moved out the next day and into the next chapter of my life. My parents were saddened by our divorce, but they were glad when their grandchild spent the weekends with us every second time. Time by time, everybody became used to it. I didn't date much. I worked a lot, saw my kids as much as I could, and really didn't dedicate much time to women. After a year or so, I began to get very lonely. I tried internet dating and such, but none of the women I met appealed to me. It seemed every woman I had any interest in was either hard and jaded by men, or was a woman of loose morals. The latter category made for a few fun dates, but I was interested in something serious and long-term. On a lark, I investigated international dating websites. I had always had an interest in Buddhism and found myself on a website dedicated to dating Laotian women. That's where I met her. Her name was Nina Fuang. She was beautiful, she was young, only 23, and she was smart. She was a university graduate who had a good education from a Laotian high school. Her father was a surgeon, her mother a nurse. She was interested in finding an American man. I started chatting with her, and we got along great. She was fluent in English. Did I mention she was beautiful? She was tall for a Laotian gal, 5 feet 3 inches, with long black hair, dark eyes and light, honey brown skin. I was drawn to her. I told her I was recently divorced and had 2 teenage kids. At first I thought this news would be difficult to her, but she only wanted to know the circumstances of my divorce. I told her the truth, and she told me that she would never cheat on me. After a few months of correspondence and video chat, we planned for me to go to Laos to meet her. I used my secret money fund for the trip. It had come in handy, after all. I traveled to Vientiane, where Nina worked, via Bangkok, and Nina and her parents met me at the airport and escorted me to my hotel. Nina was living with her parents. Nina looked better in life than on video, and she smiled with her whole being when we first saw each other in person. I fell in love with her at first sight. We had lunch or dinner with her family several times during my 3-week stay. We went sightseeing with her parents. I went out with Nina alone, too, but the family was obviously a very important part of her life. Once I was with Nina and her friend in a restaurant. She was a teacher like Nina, and she told me, when Nina went to the toilet, that Nina had a fiancé who died in a job accident 1 week before their wedding. She said that Nina was depressed for months after that, and finally emerged from that state. Some months later, Nina was still not dating. So her friend suggested that she try a dating website. She had been on it for several months, with no real interest in anyone, until she met me. She observed that I was like medicine to her, that she had really come alive again when we started corresponding. She admonished me not to break Nina's heart. I knew that Nina had been engaged before, and that her fiancé had died, but I didn't know about her depression and the rest of the story. I was touched. Before I departed, I knew what I had to do. Very simply, I asked her if she wanted to be my wife, and she told me yes. I gave her an engagement ring. She knew the Western custom, and she was glad for the ring. We kissed and hugged and professed our love to each other. I departed, and we made our plans for the wedding across the ocean. 6 months later, my children and I traveled to Vientiane. The wedding was a big event with Buddhist monks present, and it took place over several days. After wedding, I came home with my new bride. I learned later that my kids told Clara that I had married a girl from Laos. Sophie and Keith told me she cried a lot, and she was very sad for weeks. Lovemaking with Nina was amazing. We gave ourselves to each other completely. We both knew what it was to have loved and lost, and we didn't waste any time or energy on anything but expressing our love to each other. The months rolled on. By the time of my company's Christmas party, my bride was 5 months pregnant, and she was still a stunningly beautiful woman. She was dressed in a holiday dress that showed off her legs and her increasingly swollen bust, but, mostly, hid her rapidly swelling belly. And her husband Jim congratulated us at the company party. Our first daughter's name was Nancy, named after my mother. 1 year later, we had another beautiful daughter, whom we named Tara. Nina communicated with her family and her friend on Skype. My grandmother died, and she left me some money. After discussing it with Nina, we decided to move into my old home so as to have room for our growing family. Clara accepted my buyout offer. Sophie was almost done with high school by then and wanted to live with us until her graduation. Clara was frankly relieved, as she and Sophie had not gotten on very well since the divorce. Clara had confessed to her a couple years before that the reason for the divorce was that she had cheated on me. Sophie called her a 304 and didn't speak to her for months. Eventually, normalcy returned, but Sophie was forever rather cool towards Clara after that. For his part, when Keith found out the circumstances of our divorce, he was angry at her, but acknowledged that she was his mother and forgave her more quickly. In any event, I bought out Clara and she bought a nice condo for herself. Keith and I assisted Clara in moving to the condo, and she thanked me. Sophie went to the grandparents instead of assisting her mother. I no longer had any hate in my heart for Clara. I was simply neutral towards her. My heart was filled with love for Nina and my 4 children. I would have liked Sophie to have fully forgiven her mother, but it wasn't my place to put pressure on her. I did tell her that her mother loved her and had been a good mother to her, and that both of them would be happier if she could someday forgive her. My love for Nina grew, as did hers for me. Sophie moved out, on to college, and my little ones grew. The years went on. My eldest children graduated from college and got jobs locally. My little ones grew fast. I didn't keep up too much with Clara, but I know she dated some, but never got too serious. At one point, she seemed to be getting serious with a guy, and he moved into her condo. It turned out that this man was an abuser. He kicked my ex-wife down the stairs, breaking her leg and arm. The man was arrested, and Clara was hospitalized. Keith visited his mother, and he telephoned me. He told me Clara cried all day because her daughter did not visit her. I told Nina what Keith had told me. Nina was angry. She visited Sophie and told her that she had to go to see her mother. Confronted with her behavior and her duty to her mother, Sophie broke down and cried. Nina held her and soothed her, and told her that it was time to make peace with Clara. I took Sophie to the hospital. We arrived at her ward. When she saw us, she began to cry from pleasure. She thanked me for bringing our daughter. Sophie and Clara wept and forgave each other. I left the room. Later, I returned and Sophie went to the bathroom. Clara asked if I could forgive her. I told her I could, and I did. She cried a lot again, but those tears were tears of relief and happiness. I told her that I hoped for her future happiness and that I had found mine with Nina and my children. My daughter returned to the room and promised she would visit her again soon. About a year later, my daughter was getting married. The wedding was a huge event. Our 2 young daughters were very excited because they were the flower girls. I walked Sophie down the aisle to her fiancé. Keith walked his mother and Nina to their seats. Clara and I were polite with one another, but I tried to avoid her without being obvious about it. I had forgiven her, but I just could never totally forget her betrayal. She talked much with Nina, however. Nina told me later Clara was very friendly with her. At one point, late in the evening, as the party was winding down, long after my youngest daughters had been taken away by the babysitters, Clara approached me as I sat at a table with Nina and my old neighbor, Diane. Disregarding propriety, she told me in a sad voice, "Grant, I can see how much you and Nina love each other. It makes me sad for what we will never have again, all because of a stupid mistake on my part. You look so good, so young, so alive and vibrant, and I'm just an aging, lonely woman now." Taken aback, I had an inspiration. "Clara, I guess I'm living proof that, after you've been cheated on, That different gyms do train the body better. Diane reddened. Clara just looked at me confused, and Nina, to whom I had told the story of Diane's attempted seduction of me so many years before, jumped up into my lap, hugging me tight and kissing me. That is true, my love, but don't look for any other gyms than mine for the rest of your life, Nina said, and I didn't. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.